Franklin County Board of County Commissioners now in session for this regularly scheduled meeting, November the 2nd. Before we get started this morning, there's a lot of issues of varying importance today. I want to thank staff and everyone that's presenting today for the information they're bringing forward to our county, to its residents, so we can all be informed and know more about what's going on with the things that concern us. Let's stand and go to prayer today and pledge. Heavenly Father, we thank you today that you are so patient with us. Father, we pray that in this room today, you would help us all to hear more than we speak. Father, to understand. Help us to do, Lord, what we know is the best thing in front of us for the citizens and residents of Franklin County. Father, we thank you for this day you've given us. Pray that you continue to be with us. We thank you that we still have no COVID numbers to speak of. Father, we pray that you would be with those today that are dealing with that and other issues. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First order of business today is approval of minutes from our regular meeting on October 19th.
So moved.
Have a motion to approve that approval by Commissioner Ward.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bolt. Any discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous. Up next will be payment of county bills.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Parrish to approve.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's also a 5-0 vote. Up next will be public comments. As I understand it, Mr. Ashley Teet, you have turned in one. Please come forward, sir. State your name for the record.
Ashley T. Thank you, Commissioners, for letting me come speak. We got an important issue. In my years of experience, of 28 years in the fire service, the EOC be a better fit by the sheriff's office. Everything, I've been on major disasters, national, federally, throughout the state of Florida, and the United States. Everywhere we go, the EOC and sheriff is working hand in hand together. They adjacent to each other. One good thing we could use, we could work together with the school board. Possibility to get a school barn up there. Possibility we get AJ to help get MH to build AOC. We could save a lot of money. We don't need to build in a flood zone. Like I said, I just surveyed the agenda said y'all replacing the floors here in this building because of floods. That's what's going to happen to AOC. It goes out of the airport. I think like all my years of experience is a better fit go up Highway 65 because we seen yesterday when the bridge got knocked out. Traffic was blocked on both sides. What if we had a chemical spill in Apalachicola? How would a hazmat team ties to get down here? Or vice versa. They had to go to Carabello. You know, we got to look at the best scenario for the citizens of Franklin County to be up Highway 65. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Another thing, could we do maybe have a workshop or some, get a meeting to sit down and talk both ways? I think that would be a good fit because we get both inputs. Well, we heard one side of the story. We ain't had heard all the sheriff's input, the school board input. I think we need to work as a joint effort.
I think that's something we might could look at, Ashley, but I will say this. We've had numerous public meetings where we talked about it. They were open to the public. Nobody's kept anybody from being here to talk about it.
I know.
You know
I'm
what
trying
I
to
mean?
get, I think all firefighters, first responders, anybody deal with emergency services need to be here
Yes,
because it affects them. And dispatch, we can have a good thing about the EOC there. You can put your communication center there with AJ. You have 24 coverage,
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yes,
So
sir.
a lot of positives.
Well, it's public comments. I don't want to take your time. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
T. And that was the only one under public comments, correct, Mr. Moon?
That I know of.
There was nothing online, was there?
The one online.
No, but I mean,
Sent.
okay,
Yes, sent any card.
all right. Okay. Up next, Ms. Michelle Maxwell, Clerk of Courts. All right, thank you, Clerk Maxwell. All right, Superintendent Howard Neighbors, Roads and Bridges. Howard, you with us today? Good morning.
I have nothing.
No action items, sir?
No, sir.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or concerns for Mr. Neighbors while he's here?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you, Mr. Neighbors, for getting that sign out on Michael Way that I requested a while back, actually just a couple weeks ago. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it and all you guys do.
Yes, yes ma'am, you're welcome.
Howard, also after the meeting, I'll get with you about some more signage that I think we need to work on. Some of it we've talked about it before and just hadn't made it there, but not to delay our meeting. I'll call you afterwards.
Okay.
Is there anything on our agenda with the concern roads or bridges that needs to be brought up now?
No, sir. I was going to
Okay.
inform you about Mr. Davis not in attendance today.
Okay.
He's out of the office, and
Okay,
I told him since he had no action items, there was no need to have his
Okay.
second in command to appear.
thank you, Howard. Keep up the good
Thank you.
work.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Tell everybody we appreciate them. All right, so Mr. Davis is not here?
No, sir, he's not.
Okay. So we'll go next to Ms. Pam Burnell, Emergency Management Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. Pam had an appointment, a doctor's appointment today, so she couldn't be here. We have no action items for the board today.
All right. Anyone have any questions from Ms. Daniels today concerning emergency management? All right, Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Mr. Eric Lovestrand, Extension Office Director for IFAS.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Didn't have any action items, but I did want to highlight one item that was in my written report, and it is about the cleanup of some of the vessels that were damaged and moved up into the marshes around the head of Apalachicola Bay. The contractor that was hired for that project, work across Franklin Bay and Gulf counties, has actually begun work in Franklin County now. So you may have seen, some people probably have heard, this really large airboat that they have that's very specific for being able to get up into these areas and collect that debris. They're literally having to cut many of those vessels into pieces and bring them out like that. And I know they've started work upriver at one spot. There was a houseboat up there that was just totally demolished on the edge of the river. They have that all out. And they also have been working on those two smaller sailboat vessels that were right across the mouth of the river from town there that you can see as you go across the bridge. So they've got quite a few targets to go, but they'll be working through the month to get those out of there.
That sounds very good, Mr. Eric. I think I'll express the same thing the rest of the board will feel. We're glad to know that that work's being done, because that is very important to get those kinds of things removed, that debris and stuff.
Yeah, they actually are bringing in some more equipment this week to be able to get some of these other ones. They're bringing in a barge, and it's got a picker arm on it that can reach out and grab big pieces of debris and get that loaded up on the barge. Overall, that project was about a $3 million grant that went through IFAS, designated for work in those three counties. But the bulk of the vessels are, as you know, over in Bay County, where they just had tremendous damage from Michael.
Right. So is that something that the IFAS officers did in conjunction with one another, or we were just a beneficiary because they were able to apply and make it more regional? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we did work together. The county extension director in Bay County was the primary investigator for us on the project and put together the grant, and has been dealing with the personnel aspects and also the contracting work on it. So we've gotten a really good deal for minimal requirements for work and time on my part. I have been involved with the field reconnaissance to identify vessels and get the contractors out there so they could actually see them before they started their work.
Very good. I'm glad we're able to join in with something that Bay County was doing through the IFAS Extension Office, so that's really good.
The funding came through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. It was
Okay.
part of that money. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Eric while he's here?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Eric, does that, some of those targets include submerged vessels around the county that are underwater?
No, I don't believe so. Not any of the ones that I saw were like, I mean, there's vessels that were partially sunk, but not totally underwater. Like there was one up in, I think it's Big Bay, way up in the head of Apalachicola Bay. That was a fairly large sailing vessel that got pushed up there. It's sitting on the bottom, but it's not totally submerged.
I see.
And if there were vessels that were like tied to docks and vessels that were down prior to Michael, those could not be included under this funding as well. So those would probably fall under FWC's derelict vessel program.
Okay. Very good. Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Commissioners? Mr. Eric, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Library Director, Ms. Whitney Roundtree.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, no action items today. We have selected a full-time library assistant candidate. We're just pending pre-employment screening, so as soon as we get those results back, hopefully she can start. The Friends of the Library are using some of their beautification project funds to add a gazebo and picnic tables to the East Point grounds. So that'll be really nice. It'll be wheelchair accessible, and we'll have some shaded outdoor seating area for our library patrons. And that's pretty much all I've got as far as new news.
Okay. Whitney, I have a question. I'm glad to see that they're doing beautification's always good. It's good to make the property more appealing to the residents and everybody that's using it. Do you know if the Friends of the Library have addressed the continued drainage issue they have on the west side of the property, or east side of the property, I'm sorry?
Yeah, they met with the neighbors. They walked over there. It's wetland, and where the neighbor that was complaining, that's also wetland. So I'm not really sure.
Well, I think maybe, Whitney, it might be, I'm not trying to give you a loaded question. I'm just trying to solve an issue. Before you were library director, we have a problem where Indian Creek flows through there. And I think that water hasn't been properly diverted into the creek. Maybe it's been stopped up, and that's causing more of an issue is the reason I'm asking. I just wanted to know if the Friends had tried to address that issue. That's all
They
I'm
have,
asking.
and they have a board meeting next week, and I do know that it's on the agenda to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was asking. I wasn't trying
Yes,
to
sir.
make you have the answer.
No.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry if I come across that way. That's not what I was trying to do. Anyone have any questions or concerns for Ms. Roundtree? Whitney, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right, up
Bye-bye.
next, Mr. Ted Mosteller, Interim Airport Manager.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ted Mosteller, Airport. I have no action items this morning unless you have something for me.
Mr. Ted, is there anything new on your report? It's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or concerns of Mr. Ted while he's here? And I would like to meet with you, Mr. Ted, sometime in the next week or so,
Sure.
just to discuss. I wasn't trying to spring on the board at all the possibility of the grant funding to extend the runway,
Yes.
but that's something that we were squeezing it to get it in with what the ARPC was doing.
Yes, sir.
So as our interim manager, I think you need to be briefed on what I'm actually talking about.
Thank you.
So I would like to meet with you at some point to do that.
I'll contact you later. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Board.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Ted at all? Thank you, Mr. Ted. All right, up next, Dr. Sandra Brook from Apalachicola Bay System Initiative.
So commissioners, no, you come on up if you don't mind. We need a couple of minutes. You still have your presentation to?
I do. It hasn't changed since I gave you the PDF.
That's
so.
fine. I have the computer set up. I didn't, if you want to take a break while I set this up, but you guys don't mind
We
being all
can
close.
do that. Nah, we'll take a 5-minute break while you set it up.
Take a break yet, but you know.
Yep. Let's take a 5-minute recess while they set up.
problematic when you need it not to be.
Franklin County Board of County Commission now back in session. Go ahead, Dr. Brooke.
Okay. So I'm Sandra Brooke. I'm the lead investigator on the Apalachicola Bay System Initiative, which is a large multidisciplinary project funded by Triumph Gulf Coast and Florida State University. It's a 5-year project. It started in 2019. And so we've made some progress. COVID kind of slowed us down. But what I'm going to do today is just give you some snapshots of what we've been doing with some guidance from Commissioner Jones on some aspects of the project that I think you might be interested in. I'm happy to take questions if there's anything that you want to know that I've missed out. Okay, next slide. So there are some basic questions that ABSI is asking. What caused the oyster collapse? Why have the oysters not recovered despite millions of dollars of restoration investment? And what actions need to be taken to restore the Apalachicola oyster reefs? So we are working with local stakeholders, a very important part of our project, to develop a science-based management and restoration plan. So just to emphasize here, FSU is a university. We have no management authority whatsoever. We are purely science and guidance. And so it will be up to the management entities to decide whether they choose to accept our recommendations or not. Okay? Next slide. So we know about the oyster crash in 2013. The oysters of Apalachicola, oyster fishery of Apalachicola Bay was declared a federal fishery disaster, and that stimulated some restoration funds. But it's really hard sometimes to look back and see a cause of a problem. And usually when a system collapses, a biological system collapses, especially one as resilient as an estuarine system, it's not one thing that did it, very rarely. So what happened? Well, we had a number of droughts, and when we get those reduced flows, the salinity goes up. When the salinity goes up, Bay gets very salty, and all those predators come in, especially oyster drills. The drills did a number on the oysters back then, 2007, 2009, and there were some dry years after that as well. So with those increased predators, they impact the little ones, the juveniles especially. And so we got a decline in the juveniles. Of course, if you don't have the babies, you're not going to get the adults. Okay, so that was a problem. When you don't have the adults, they're not producing larvae to make more spat. So we end up with a situation called recruitment failure, where we're just not getting enough babies settling to keep the populations up. Okay, so that's one arm of what happened, we think. So then oysters are funny beasts, as you know. As you harvest them, you're also taking away their habitat. With most fisheries, that's not the case. You take away the fish, the habitat's still there. You replenish the fish, everything's cool. But in this case, as you're taking the oysters away, if there aren't enough oysters to keep those reefs going, then you end up in a situation where the reefs are declining faster than they're growing. The reshelling process was sporadic at best. There used to be a budget item in the Florida legislature or budget to reshell, and that went away. So this reshelling has become sporadic. So then you have this habitat limitation. There aren't enough good places for oysters to set and grow. So you got not enough oysters, not enough habitat, and that contributes to the collapse. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, and it's, like I said, it's hard to go back in time. Our mission now is to move forward with the understanding of what we think happened. So next slide. So ABSI has 4 primary components. Research is the underpinning of everything. That's what we do. We're a university. Community engagement is an absolutely critical part of this project. It doesn't matter what we come up with or what we do. If we don't have buy-in from the stakeholders, we're going to fail, or it's just going to be a complete waste of time and money. And we don't want that. So with using the research and the community engagement, we're going to develop some options for an adaptive management plan. So the way oysters have traditionally been managed is through seasonal closures, area closures, and bag limits. So we're trying to come up with some other options that might allow the management agencies to be a bit more flexible. So when they see that things aren't going well, they can adapt quickly and maybe recover the situation. At the moment, the management plan is just a series of options. Nothing has been decided at this point. And then habitat restoration. We need to bring back the habitat. There's really not enough habitat in the bay at the moment to really bring back what we need. Next slide. So this is kind of a scary slide. I'm not going to talk about it. These are just our research, all the different facets of our research. As you can see, there are a lot of them. If anybody's got any questions specifically, I'm happy to answer them. But all I really have to say about this slide is that usually when university researchers write grants to do research, they come along, they do their research, they get their results, they publish a paper, they move on. And most of the time, that information does not end up in the hands of the managers that can use it, and a lot of the time it's not even in a form that managers can use. It's in this dusty paper in a library somewhere. I mean, that's a little cynical, but the point is that what we're trying to do differently here, because I've heard the bay has been studied to death, and yes, there's been a lot of research done. What we're trying to do is take that information and turn it into a series of tools that we're calling decision support tools. And that sounds a bit geeky, but what it means is that they are tools that managers can use to make decisions about the status of the fishery and how to manage them. And so those decision support tools, they're going to be user-friendly, they're going to be available, publicly available, and they will help with the management options and the restoration plans. Okay, so that's essentially what we're doing. That's where the research is going, not to dusty papers in libraries. Okay, next slide. So I'm just going to talk about some of the field work we've been doing. Now, we noticed when we came into this project that entities like FDACS and FWC and some of the researchers had been mostly focused on the subtidal areas, the areas that are fished most heavily, and those that supported the most oysters. And that made perfect sense. But what we were interested in is how much do these coon bars, these intertidal habitats, how much do they contribute to the overall system? Are they just kind of there and they grow oysters and the oysters die and they're really not very important, so we don't have to really worry about them? Or do they contribute significantly to the number of babies, the spat in the bay? Are they important or are they not? Do we have to manage them or can we just let them go? So we set up a monitoring program. This is the first time this has been done in Apalachicola Bay. A lot of other areas have a lot more of these intertidal habitats, so they focus on them, but that hadn't happened here. So we had a number of sites, and again, I'm not going to go into the details, but I just want to say that we have been studying these reefs for about 1.5 years now. And next slide. And one of the things I'd like to point out is that we had these spat collectors out, which are, as you can see on the right there, that's Chris, that's our tech. He has this like cross of PVC and they've got a string of shells on either side. This is what FWC uses to measure the number of spat, or babies. You all know what oyster spat are in the bay. And we did this in the intertidal areas, and those shells there, as you can see, are absolutely covered in baby oysters, and that's a month's growth. So there is a significant amount of recruitment of these spat into these intertidal areas. So they may be important. Next slide. So from now on, we're going to sort of stop the heavy-duty intensive monitoring of the intertidal habitats. We've got a paper in progress that we'll release on what's going on in those intertidal areas. But now what we're going to do is step back, focus on the subtidal areas, but we're going to keep an eye on the intertidal habitats using drones. So we fly over them. You can identify with the drone imagery all the little independent clusters of oysters. So we're going to use a machine learning technique to count those, and that will allow us a really rapid assessment of what's going on in all those oyster bars. So we can kind of put the intensive work to one side and say, okay, we've done that. We have an idea of the dynamics of the system. Now we're just going to keep an eye on it with this kind of low level, or rather low labor method that will give us a lot of broad overview information fairly quickly. I hope that makes sense. Okay, next slide. What we did last year as well, I realized that looking at a bunch of spreadsheets with numbers on from FWC and FDAX didn't really tell me anything much about what was going on in the Bay. And so I needed a quick way of understanding the status of the system and diving in the Bay. I don't know if any of you have ever been dumb enough to do it, but it's really difficult. It's time consuming and it's very weather limited. And you run a very high risk of getting blown out into the Gulf of Mexico. I know this from experience. So I decided that, yeah, we still need to do diving to make sure that our sites match up with the data from FWC. But what I decided to do was get hold of one of the local oystermen, and he took us out in his boat, and we took 6 tong licks from the sides of the boat. As you can see there, those little stars, that's 1 tong lick each. And we put them in these rubber bins, and we counted the volume of material, the type of material, the number of live oysters, and the size of the live oysters. So it's very kind of quick and dirty kind of data collection. But it was really useful, I think. Next slide. Because it gave me a good sense of what's going on. And again, this is a very noisy slide. I'm not going to go into the details, but basically, the bigger the circle, the more volume. And each of those circles on there, the bigger ones are about 5 gallons. And the red is the live oysters. So if you look, you can kind of see that there are oysters in the north part of Dry Bar and North Spur. There's some over in the miles, but those around quite a small area. There's a few small bumps up there that have oysters on them. Most of them don't. The bigger ones to the south of the miles don't really have many. Over by Cap Point there are some, and there are some on Hotel on a restoration site. Those little blue dots are areas where, because we didn't just want to go to the site where we knew that there might be oysters. We wanted to get a broader view. All of those blue dots, I don't know how well you can see at this screen, look, but they are areas that we found nothing. So what this means is that it looks like there's a lot of places on there that have oysters, and there are, but they're very small, they're very discrete, as in very limited, and they are mostly areas that have been restored recently, as in 2015 and 2017. So there has been some restoration going on since 2012-13 time. The material that was put down, the fossilized shell material, doesn't seem to be there anymore, and if there is, it's mostly buried. The natural shell is pretty much gone. It's either hash or mud. The areas that are doing best are the ones that, as I said, in 2015, 2017, they put down this small lime rock. And there is still layers of that lime rock with decent-sized oysters growing on it. But again, small, discrete patches. Next slide. So I'll answer questions if you have any questions on that, but I'm going to jump ahead now to our restoration experiment. So at the beginning of this year, we designed a restoration experiment, and the objective was to see which materials did well. Now, we chose natural shell because that's the gold standard for culching. It has been forever. This small lime rock that seems to have done well in the Bay, and larger lime rock, which might be a bit more stable and have more of those crevices for things to live in. Now, the thing is, shell and the small lime rock are tongable. The larger lime rock isn't easily tongable. So that would only really be used in areas that were closed to fishing for whatever reason. So it was just to see what happened, to build back an ecosystem. Because the other thing I noticed in the Bay is that there were, where we did find oysters, they were mostly sort of a bunch of oysters on rocks. If you look at a functional oyster system, it's got lots of animals crawling around in it. There's clumps of things. And that's not great for the oystermen because I have to break it up, but it is great for the animals that use those systems as home. So I think we need a bit of both. We need areas that are fishable, certainly. It's the culture of Apalachicola Bay. That's what we want to bring back. But we also need areas that we can set aside for sort of Mother Nature to do what she does and to provide homes for some of the animals that use those reefs and that are also economically valuable in the bay. So next slide. The other, actually, what I just want to say that I did a review of all the restoration work that has been done in the Gulf of Mexico since the Deepwater Horizon spill. That released a lot of restoration funding. And the traditional approach is to put a thin layer of material over a fairly large area. But what happened when you went back and look at the results is a lot of this material either got buried, washed away, or the oysters just died. So my thought was, let's get the oysters up off the ground, out of that sort of muddy sediment, up away from things that are moving around, and get them into that nice clean water. So our reefs were 30 feet by 30 feet by 1.5 feet tall. So that's quite a bit thicker than anything else that had been done. The average depth of the restoration is maybe 1 to 3 inches. So this is a lot smaller footprint, a lot more material high up. So it's a trade-off, right? So we did 5 of these different replicates, we call it, 5 different spots, 1 on Dry Bar, 1 on Peanut Ridge, and so we've got 30 little reefs altogether: shell, small lime rock, large lime rock. And next slide. And we had the oystermen help us do this. We employed the local oystermen, and I must say I've never seen anybody work so hard in my life. They just kept going. This was just really tough work, and they just kept going. It was quite incredible. And so we started on the 26th of May, and we finally got the last batch out on the 24th of June. So there's a little bit of spread there, which isn't ideal, especially in spawning season. But we got it all out, and a couple of weeks later, we went along, and there was spat on Dry Bar and on Peanut Ridge. So that was encouraging. We saw quite a lot of spat. So next slide. And there are the spat. Right, so you can see all the little brown dots. So that was really cool. We've been along since, and there were a couple of storms, not bad ones. We were fortunate this year. We didn't get any hurricanes, but some of those shell piles and the small lime rock have been blown around. Peanut Ridge is a really hard place to work. Dry Bar, the reefs are still fairly intact, but we're not getting as much spat set on them. So, you know, this is lesson learned, and we are planning on doing more experiments this spring, if we can get the permits in time. Maybe using crushed concrete because it's readily available, and using different materials that might be a bit more stable. Maybe mixing shell with some of these other materials because the animals, like the oysters, love to sit on shell. So we are planning to do more next year. We're also taking over one of the other projects that has ended, the 2015 Restore experiment that Florida DEP was managing. They've stopped. We're going to pick that up. So we'll be monitoring those as well. Next slide. One of the components of ABSI is the hatchery. And this is not a commercial enterprise. It is for research and restoration. So one of the things that they've had success with in Chesapeake Bay, because their oyster fishery collapsed a long time before Appalachia's did, they take hatchery-raised animals, they put them on shell, and they put them out on the reefs. And the idea here is that you kickstart the system. If you don't have enough larvae in the system from the wild oysters, you kickstart it by putting these hatchery animals out. So we're going to try this. We did try this. We got a couple of successful spawns this year, which was great because we were working out of a greenhouse, which wasn't ideal. But our hatchery staff came through, and we got some nice spawns, 2 of them, and then another one in September that unfortunately didn't make it. So what did we do with those animals? Next slide. So we put them in cages. So the question is, and it's a really important question, do these, you put these animals out there on these shells, well, what happens to them? Do they do their job, or do they just die? A lot of aquaculture animals that have been used for restoration don't make it in the wild. And if you think about it, it sort of makes sense because they've been babied all the way along until suddenly they're thrown into this world full of teeth. And you get a lot of mortality. So given the cost and the effort, is it really worth it to do this, or should we just let nature take its course? So this was the question. So we put our spat in these cages. There was about 50 shells, about 150 spat, and we put 1, or actually 2, 1 from each spawn, on each of our little reefs. And we've been going back to look at them. It's been kind of hard because some of them had been buried, especially on Peanut Ridge with the current. Dry bar, they're doing okay, but we're getting a lot of oyster drills. So it's kind of frustrating, you know, you put all this work into it and then it just doesn't give you the results that you want. But we'll keep going. This was year one and we've learned some hard lessons. So it's not over yet. Next. So the results of these experiments will be part of a restoration plan that we develop. And again, FSU is not in the business of large-scale restoration. We're a university. So our advice, I suppose, or our options will be provided to those that will be doing the restoration, probably FWC, and they can decide whether they want to follow those guidelines or not. But that's our job, to do the science and come up with some guidelines. Next slide. Community engagement, like I said, is a very important part. There are a number of facets to our community engagement, some of which we have not been able to do because of COVID, the in-person work. We have established a community advisory board. It was one of the first things we did. And we have had oystermen's workshops because we recognized that maybe internet-based, Zoom-based kind of fora are not the best for some of the stakeholders. So we had in-person meetings at ANA with a group of oystermen so that they could express their opinions about what we were doing and what we were trying to do. A number of other outreach issues, things that we're going to be doing. We're going to be at the Seafood Festival this weekend, so please come along and feel free to interrogate the staff if you have any questions. So those are, let's just move on from there. We do have a number of outreach things, but I'd like to talk a bit more about the Community Advisory Board. So there are, I don't want to do the math on there, but I think there are about 23 members, and these people were selected through an interview process, and we tried to pick people that were representative of their demographic, and I mean by that that we got a cross-section of stakeholder groups. So we've got nonprofits, seafood industry, fishermen, business, local government, federal government, state agencies, and then aquaculture, a number of other people. So we try to get a broad cross-section, so we get everybody's opinions represented. And they are tasked with developing recommendations informed by science, that's important, and stakeholder experiences, which is equally important, for the Apalachicola Bay system. So they will then provide or vet options for management and restoration. So they are our link to the local community. So FSU's up there in the ivory tower, and then there's the stakeholders, and the CAB are the link between us. They are our voices, the voices of the community and our voices. And they're hopefully there, or they are there, to provide consensus. And we know from experience and just common sense that whatever we come up with, not everybody's going to be happy with. What we're trying to do is come up with a plan that people can live with. So we know that we're not going to please everybody, and there's going to be some unhappiness. So that's the Community Advisory Board. So far we've had 15 meetings. There weren't supposed to be this many, but we started out in person with all-day meetings. And then COVID happened, and so we turned to Zoom, and we just didn't feel it was just too cruel to expect the Community Advisory Board to be on a Zoom call for 8 hours. So we cut down the hours, and we doubled up the number of meetings. So it has been a long, rather tortuous process, I must admit, but they stuck with it, and next slide, and we've finally got an outcome. Next slide. There we go. So we came up with a number of goals. Goal A was a healthy and productive ecosystem. Notice this isn't specifically the fishery, but the whole ecosystem. Sustainable management of the oyster resources. We don't want to open the fishery and have the same thing happen again. So it needs to be sustainable management. And goal C was a management plan, ecosystem-based adaptive management and restoration plan, supported by the Apalachicola Bay stakeholders, okay? And then an engaged stakeholder community. So that starts out with the Community Advisory Board, but then after ABSI has passed, we already have a small group of people in place that are working on a continuation of the advisory board that will take this document and try and implement it, make sure it's implemented. So what we do doesn't just sit on the shelf getting dusty somewhere. It actually is a living document, and it can be there to do some good in the community. At the October meeting, the CAB prioritized potential strategies, 42 of them, which I'm not going to list, for inclusion in the plan. So we went through this long drawn-out process. We came up with these goals, we came up with strategies, we came up with actions, and then the Community Advisory Board prioritized all of that. So now we have a list of what the stakeholders think are the most important things for us to address. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Next. So the next steps, the last phase of this Community Advisory Board, well, the last meeting of this phase is going to be in November, and that's when the members are going to vote to approve the draft management and restoration plan. And this is publicly available. All of the information that we generate, apart from some of the science, which is kind of lagging behind because it needs to be quality checked and processed, but everything that the Community Advisory Board does and the Oyster workshops, all of the information, the agendas, the outcomes, the summaries are available on our website. So if any of you are interested or anybody's interested, you can find out what we've been doing on that website. And it's on my last slide if you wish to write it down. But yeah. So actually, if you could back up one. I got ahead of myself. There we go. So early in 2022, we'll be sending out a questionnaire to the public. Now, part of the problem with this pandemic situation is that we have not been able to hold the public workshops. And so even though we have what we hope are representative opinions from the stakeholder groups, we don't have the general public, and we know that there are more opinions out there. And we would like to hear from them. This is important too. As I said, we're not necessarily going to be able to accommodate everybody, but we do need to hear those opinions, even ones that are mad at us and don't agree with what we're doing. So the public workshops will be held next year, hopefully. In the meantime, we'll be sending out a questionnaire to get feedback. CAB will review the feedback from the public, and they'll incorporate that feedback into the management options. Okay, so we are incorporating the general public as best we can. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to shut up now and answer any questions. That was a bit of a whirlwind, and I threw a lot of information at you. If you would like some extra information, there's the ABSI website, which is right down there at the bottom. And then we also have an email that just comes to the ABSI staff, and I usually deal with those. So if you have an opinion or a question or just want to vent, and then feel free to email us at that email address. And I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? I have a couple, but I'll defer to anybody else who wants to ask. Mr. Leary, you have a question? Go ahead and ask it, sir.
Yes, I'm Larry Hale. I've lived in this county about 47 years now. And Larry, get up to my. My name's Larry Hale. I've lived in this county about 47 years. I'm really concerned about upland drainage into our bay. And I know just recently, driving to Tallahassee, where they had clear-cut property. And I know what defoliant smells like. I experienced it in Vietnam, and this stuff stinks. But they were spraying an awful lot of it on thousands of acres of timberland as they're getting ready to plant more pine trees. They want to kill everything that's not a pine tree. And all that stuff washes into our bays and our streams and rivers. Now, for years, Buckeye did it up in Tate's Hill. I remember George Kervin standing up and begging the county not to let them open more ditches in the Tate's Hill, because Tate's Hill was like a primordial sponge that held that water for the dry season. Now it's like flushing a commode. When it rains, it all comes at one time, washing the mud and sediment out. And that does cover up the oyster reefs. Carabello Harbor, when the Spanish came, was a deep natural harbor and never had to be dredged. And now you have to drag a skiff all the way up to Gully Branch, where once you could take your boat to get away from hurricanes, but now it's mudslicks. But these are problems that have to be addressed if we want to save our bay. But we can't keep allowing these people to spray defoliants and fertilizers haphazardly every time they clear cut a piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you for your perspective, Mr. Laird. Anyone else have a question? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Brooks. Appreciate it very much. You had set out, in summary, 4 goals that the Community Advisory Board had determined. Realizing the world-famous reputation that Apalachicola has for its oysters, and the fact that it was a defining moment when the bay was shut down. What I'm interested in knowing is, and I've talked with FWC about this, is there a possibility, and I'm looking at your goals, that you could write a progress report to the people, say every 6 months, relative to the progress of these goals, written in layman language that the average newspaper reader can read every 6 months?
I think that's an excellent idea. We can do that.
Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Will you be able to give us feedback here at the commission so that we can help launch that with you and make sure that the folks get it?
Yes,
okay.
We can do that. And we'll talk about that offline, how that would work. I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm Commissioner Locker, District 3. I have a lot of oyster in my district. Y'all doing a study, huh? I'm one of the person I don't like study, because I don't see, what have y'all accomplished for us putting the people back to work? How long before they go back to work, or the growth? Have they done any growth?
Okay, well, what have we accomplished? Most of what we've accomplished is understanding how to bring what best to do and what not to do to try and put more habitat out there. It's the bay, from what I've seen, needs a lot more habitat. You've got, it's not, I mean, everybody knows it's not what it used to be. There's a lot of areas where there's no reef. There's no reef. You pull up mud or shell hash, and ultimately the oysters have to bring the bay back. We can't do it. They have to do it. All we can do is provide them the best situation for them to do it. So just understanding what's going on isn't enough, right? I understand what you're saying. You can study it and study it. You can monitor. All monitoring does is documents the demise of a system. It doesn't ask questions why these are happening and can we do anything to stop it. So what I believe we can do is provide a lot more habitat, so any oysters out there have a decent place to settle and grow. We see spat fall. We've had decent rains in the last few years. The whole water issue is something else entirely. But the importance of management of the water becomes less significant when we have decent rains. Does that make sense? You know, if there's no rain, everybody wants it. It's not around. So we can't do a whole hell of a lot about what the Army Corps is doing at the moment, the management. We can't do anything about whether it rains or not. So the things that we can do is provide nice stable habitat for when the system is good, because there's plenty of places for it to grow, and we can take care of the reefs by replenishing them, managing the fishery, and letting the oysters do their job.
Well, why them beds to the west?
Sorry?
Why the western beds? Down the mile, Dry Bar, Northborough, and all them. The shells, they deteriorated to nothing. What caused that?
So normally on an oyster reef, the oyster clumps hold everything together, right? And when the oysters die, there's still clumps. They're stable. But if the oysters have been taken away and haven't replenished, then what you end up with, when they restore, they're putting a whole lot of loose material down and in a thin layer on top of what's either mud or shell hash. So from what we can establish, it either gets buried or moved around, And the oysters can't grow quickly enough to take that material they've put down and stabilize it. So when we go out there and look at those patches that were put down in 2015, by now it should be, you would think, given how fast the oysters grow, you should have clumps in there. You should have clumps that things are living in. But what we saw when Shannon tonged up was just some oysters that are sitting on individual rocks. And after 6 years, I would expect it to be more developed than that. So either the oysters aren't getting there, or the oysters that settle are not surviving, and then the next year's recruitment comes along, and so some of them make it. But I think what we need to aim for is trying to get that foundation back, get the reefs back, so that it's nice and stable, rather than just getting mud and sand just washing over it. So that's what we that's what we're trying to do. That's what we tested.
Did y'all study the bottom, the dirt on the bottom?
We've taken some, we've got people taking sediment cores for pesticides. So we've got a study looking at different pesticides, both historically, like down through the core, and on the surface, so that we can see what's recent. Also, as the gentleman alluded, the floodplain's changed over time. So instead of flowing nicely through the floodplain, I like the commode analogy, it's just flushing right out. So there's a number of things that could be going on. You know, oysters take out that organic material, but they also need the nutrients that the floodplain brings. So in what's going on with the mud is that it's gone from having a lot of calcium carbonate, which probably came from all those oyster shells degrading, to just being organic material, which is just mud. So the type of sediment I'm curious about is whether the oyster decline is a symptom of a dying bay, or if the oysters are just a separate problem and the bay is doing okay, and whether losing those oysters is now causing the decline of the bay. So it's a really complicated system, but short answer to your question, Mr. Lockley, is yes, we're looking at the mud.
Okay, I got 3 or 4 more questions. I'll leave, but
you can always call me or email me.
No, the people need to hear this, because.
Yeah. I mean, I can come back anytime you want.
Well, what's happening? You said 5 years. Y'all gonna do a study for 5 years. Okay. At the end of the 5 years or before the 5 years, is the people gonna be able to go back to work?
It depends whether the oysters can bring back the fishery. All we can do is help them along.
So it's not a guarantee.
Nothing's a guarantee. But I think if we can, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think if we can get enough habitat out there quickly enough, and we continue to have good rains, and we don't have hurricanes, and something else doesn't happen, then we're seeing spat in the bay. That's encouraging, because Chesapeake didn't see that. They were really spat limited. So as long as there's enough oysters to give us spat, and this is why we're concerned about the coon bars, because there's oysters on the coon bars, and you know, they might be helping out.
Well, in that last study, they had a nursery right there on coming up the channel. I mean, it was in polluted waters, and they wouldn't mess with that. But that was producing spat, and it was blowing all over the bay. Then they went in there with the study and moved all the moisture, talking about they putting them to clean areas. But hey, that was your nursery they moved. That was producing spat every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was blowing all over the bay, whichever the wind was, north, east, south, or west. It was blowing all over the bay, so they done away with that. So what they gonna do to replace that? I mean, that was one of the things, and it was working.
I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to.
I'm talking about right on this channel here. They had a bar there in the closed waters, right up the main channel, and they didn't let nobody fish it because they said it was in polluted water. But at the same time, it was producing,
Right,
blowing all over the bay.
right.
But they took in the oysters they was nice size, they was catchable size, so they had the people to go in there, catch them up, and put them on different bars.
Relaying. Yeah.
But they didn't ever replace them, so that did away with that.
Right.
So
Yeah, I've heard about the relaying.
You done lost your nursery and your spats.
Right. Yeah, the oystermen were talking about the relaying and saying that I mean, they got paid for doing it, but they didn't think it was a really good idea because when they moved it, you know, they died and, yeah.
But, you know, the people need, either they go back to work, they look forward to going back to work. Y'all getting paid. You getting paid for the next 5 years. You're getting a check everywhere, so often, whatever, give a payday. I'm not trying to be smart, but the truth is the light. You getting paid. These oystermen are not getting paid. If they don't have a guarantee they're gonna be an oysterman. So either we let them know something so they can start training for another job, or they can look forward to going back to oystering, or either, you know.
So I can't predict the future. I don't know if we get a bad series of droughts and we don't replenish the habitat, then they're not going to come back. But I will say that the data from one of the studies that's just ended, the restoration study in 2015, I think it was, so 2015, 27, I get them mixed up. But anyway, over time, so they since then, since that experiment, that culching was put in place, they've had a lot of spats settle, but they haven't seen adult oysters. This last round, for the first time, they saw adult oysters on those sites. So with it may be, I don't know, but with the reduction in fishing pressure, those baby oysters have had the chance to grow up, and hopefully they will spawn and they will help replenish the bay. I keep going back to this, but I think one of the biggest problems is the fact that there's so little habitat out there that even if they do open the fishery again, which they will, the fishery will open probably. It's due to open in 5 years. But I think the challenge is going to be, if we don't put a whole lot more habitat out there, then you're going to end up with these tiny little spots, and that's the only place that grows oysters, and that's the only place that people can fish. If we're going to have a sustainable fishery, we need bigger areas so that not all that effort is focused on those tiny little spaces. Does that make sense? So we need to get...
No, none of it makes sense to me. I fished that bay for 40 years. And
there's not much out there anymore.
Y'all were doing study 40 years ago. And no oyster. I mean, so I don't see no future in this study. I don't. I mean, you might. I hope you do. But, you know, like, if you do, if you ain't got no enforcement out there, it's going to be back to the same thing. I mean, you can have all the oyster in the world and nobody enforcing it.
Yeah, I agree. That's a law enforcement issue, and we've pulled law enforcement into the Community Advisory Board and asked them questions, and that's part of one of our goals is to try and get LE more engaged in the oyster fishery when it comes back.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be smart. I'm just, you know.
Are you done with your questions, Commissioner? I'm sorry. He's trying to ask a question.
Okay.
But if you're not done, he needs to wait. So, hold on just a second, Mr. Laird.
I'm not trying to be smart. My constituents asking me every day.
Every day.
Every day. You know, they come to my house, I see them in the stove, and I just need to have some answers for them. That's all I'm trying to find out. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Mr. Larry. You have a question, sir?
Yes, I just wanted to ask a question of her. Is there any interaction with the forestry department? You know, they gave Tate Hill to the forestry to manage it, and they're putting better drainage in up there instead of reflooding it. We lobbied for them to buy it.
Mr. Larry, if you would just direct the questions up here, she'll hear you. She'll hear you.
Okay. But anyway, I'd like to know if there's any interaction with the forestry on managing what goes on those plots of where they're planting trees and stuff, and what's flushing into our bay. Like I say, defoliant has no business anywhere near our bay. The energy companies use it, and I know after they sprayed this area near St. James, they had to go back and respray it again. From one of the contractors told me that because the rain had washed a lot of it off. So, you know, how much of it is breaking down, how much of it's going in our bay, and how is that affecting our, not only the oysters, but the crabs and other things. I remember when I first came in this county, there were 3 crab processing plants going. And of course, they depended on the oyster reefs too. So that's something else to be considered. When they cut Bob Site's cut through, they lost 1,100 acres of oysters the first night from the saltwater intrusion.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. So, Dr. Brooke, do you know the answer to that question? Is forestry being engaged in this process?
Yeah, the ACF stakeholders is not forestry specifically, no. But the ACF stakeholders that are addressing floodplain issues. So indirectly, yes. Our purview is not to deal with forestry, but of course these issues with the floodplain influence the river flows and the stuff that's coming down the river. So yes, indirectly we're working with the ACF stakeholders.
And also some of the, you spoke earlier about some of the core samples and stuff you're taking, that would show up those kind of things as well, correct?
I need to look into what exactly they're using. We're looking at organochlorines and organophosphates, which are common agricultural chemicals. I'm not sure specifically what the defoliants are. They're probably weed killers. So I'll look into that and see if we can add that to the list. We've got a PhD student working on those right now.
Thank you. Mr. Locklear, were you done with your question, sir? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, we weren't trying to bypass it. Go ahead, sir.
I got a couple. One issue is high salinity has degraded and caused all the oyster shells in this bay to crumble. We can't control that as we don't get the freshwater flows we need down the Apalachicola River. Also, when you don't get the floods during certain times of the year, which is usually in March and around June during dog days and all of that, it brings nutrients down, natural nutrients, decaying acorns and other things that are out on the river banks. Rain ain't gonna do us no good because there's no nutrients in the rain to feed the oyster. Without the oyster, you're gonna have a dead bay. It's basically what you're gonna have, because they're the water quality feature. One oyster purifies 50 gallons of water per day. One oyster, which you already know. I'm just putting this out there for the public. So we're fighting a heck of a battle here with water flows. Now, in the last couple of years, we've had some water flows. As you stated, you're starting to see spat. And you will. I also agree with your terminology about trying to build the reefs up. Once all those shells in the bay deteriorated because of high salinity saltwater intrusion, then it's just flat. The reefs have to be built up. So that's another positive. But my question is, if there's no one in the state, I guess you would say, that's going to replenish the oyster shells in this bay. Once the oysters are taken out of this bay now, they're not shucked and processed where the state has the ability to collect those oyster shells and put them back in the bay. 95% of your oysters go out to a half shell raw bar. The oyster shells don't come back here. So if you build this bay back up the way it used to be, within a year, with the intense pressure on it, you're right back just as flat as this table is right here. How do you get around that issue? The only way you can do it is to have limited harvest to allow the reefs to continue to flourish.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think they're recommending opening the bay when there's 450 bushels per acre.
That's the FWC stipulation, yeah.
So why did they let it get down to 25 bushels an acre before they shut the bay down?
It's a good
now
question.
It's going to take 2 or 3 times as long for it to replenish itself. I mean, there's a lot of issues, but a lot of it has to do with management of the bay, along with the saltwater intrusion and other things. But you cannot oyster it down to flat, you know, just as clear as the top of this table here, and then say, oh my God, we got a disaster here. It should have been shut down a long time ago, or limited a long time ago,
and
to allow the reefs to flourish. So there's a lot of issues that goes to the management of the bay.
Yeah.
If you bring it back, if it's not properly managed within a year, you're right back where you started.
Yep.
Now you don't put $15 to $20 million into the bay, but if it's not, as you and Commissioner Lockley were talking about law enforcement, Department of Agriculture no longer plants shells in this bay, so you're steady taking, you know, and I always liken this to my bank account. I can't sit there and write checks all day if I never make a deposit.
No, I agree.
mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So you can study, you can do all this stuff with the right intentions, but there has to be partners in this. And those are some of my, you know, I personally, I think the bay ought to be shut down in the summertime. No summer harvesting, which is the way it was when I was growing up here. Yes, it puts a hardship on people, but they knew it was coming. They either went to building houses or go shrimping or other things that are in season. If you're a commercial fisherman, you didn't rely just on oyster. At some point, you got to give the oysters time to replenish. You got to give the bay a break. And without those oysters out there purifying the water coming down from Georgia and other places with the phosphates and the nitrates coming off these South Georgia farms, there's nothing out there to clean the water up. You're going to end up with a dead bay.
Yes.
Now you're affecting the guide fishermen because there ain't going to be no fish for them to catch and take people out to catch. And they're not going to be wholesome enough for them to eat without the oysters out there purifying the water. So we do need to work at this and try to get the oyster back in this bay, but it's also got to be properly managed. You just can't turn the blind eye and say it's oyster season, go get them, because there's no way to replenish them. Nobody's putting shells back in the bay for the spat to attach to. And they, you know, in my opinion, is a shell is better than all the crushed concrete and all the lime rock you can get. That's what we've always had here, but you had a barge going out there at least twice a day planting shells. And if you plant shells in the mud bottom, they're just going to sink in the mud. They're not going to prosper. They're not going to grow. The reefs have to be built up, as you stated earlier. So that's another process that we got to go through. And as you said, you can't predict the future. Well, like, we don't get freshwater flows down here to Apalachicola Bay. In the Supreme Court here, and they said, oh, it was over-harvested. No, it wasn't. There was a lack of fresh water, allowing saltwater intrusion. Decayed all the shells we had out there that established the reefs that you're referring to, and that's why we're at where we're at today. If it wasn't for that, we would still have oysters in this bay. But we lost the Supreme Court case, so we got to go on our own and try to figure out how we can best do it. But, you know, it's a complicated process, as you stated, and I agree with that, because there's a lot of contributing factors to what's going on. But if we bring it back, there has to be better enforcement, and they can't just turn a blind eye and say, okay, when they're all gone, we'll just shut it down. That's not sustainable. That's not sustainability. There has to be a buy-in from some of the state agencies that are in control of this stuff to make sure it's sustainable. And I'm wondering, my question is basically, are these going to be some of the factors that is recommended after the study is done? And whether they take your assessment or not, true enough, but they have to be included.
So we're not just science, as I said. We've got the science, which is going to tell us, I mean, just the example of the reefs. It's not just the salt water that crumbles the shell. It's being close to the muddy bottom where it's hypoxic and there's not enough oxygen, and so that dissolves, creates acid, dissolves calcium carbonate, which is the shell. So it's the ones that are up above, they're in a nice oxygen-rich environment, so they don't dissolve as quickly, regardless of whether it's salt or fresh. So yes, we've got to get it up. And, you know, I've looked at, like I said, I reviewed millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of restoration efforts, and they all did the same thing. which is what they've done in the past, which is put a thin layer to top up an existing reef. We don't have existing reefs. We've got mud. So we can't just go around topping things up. And so, yes, we've got to change our paradigm, but people aren't just going to believe that. They need to be shown that. So we're trying to show that with our experiments. Let's put it out there and show them, give them the data, because that's what's going to prove it to people. So we are trying to do things that are specifically looking at trying to help understand what's going on in the bay and fix it. The management part, I completely agree with everything you said. It needs to be done differently. And we can go back and point fingers, but it's not terribly useful at this point. So moving forward, we need to have an adaptive management plan. We've got to have different management options. Some of them are not going to be popular. Limited entry is one thing that we're thinking about. It's not popular. But if you go back to doing the same thing you did before, you're going to end up with the same result. Law enforcement, definitely. The flows, like I said, they're somewhat out of our control, but what we're doing is trying to formulate something that we can take to the Army Corps instead of just jumping up and down and saying we need more water and they're going, well, you're not going to get it. We're going to say, okay, well, it's most important for the oysters to get more water in the spring when the spat are setting and they're vulnerable to marine predators. So we need to figure out how much water do we need to maintain that sweet spot of salinity during that time period when they're vulnerable. If we can get them through that vulnerability stage to a point where they're not so susceptible to predation, it gives them a chance. So we can go to the Army Corps and say, could you just give us 2 weeks of water between this date and this date to maintain the salinity that we need on the oyster reefs? That's something that they can look at and go yes or no, but it's something a lot more specific than just saying we need more water. So that's where some of the science is going to go, is trying to understand that. What can we do to make a bad situation better?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Your major spat sets in Apalachicola Bay is
Fall.
March
Sorry,
and
go
June.
ahead. Yeah.
That's, the company I work for has their own oyster leases, and that's when we'd plant our shells ahead of that, anticipating that spat set.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the two major times. There's spat in the bay at all times,
Mm-hmm.
but there are certain opportunities where it's more prevalent.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're saying, so I agree with that. But I don't know. Getting back to the oysters that Mr. Lockley was saying was on the side of the main channel here, he's absolutely right. The predominant flows in the bay is east to west, your currents and all. With these shells, these oysters that were growing out here on this main channel, going to Bob Sykes Cut, about 3/4 of the way out on your right-hand side. Some of those oysters were stolen and sold, even though they were in polluted waters.
Mm.
Some of them were relayed. But that provided a lot of spat for the western end of this bay. The treetops, North Spur, Dry Bar, right on down. But they're not there no more.
I know.
So there needs to be some shells planted there that can reestablish that reef, which provides a spat for the western end of the bay.
And areas that are closed to fishing are good areas to develop sanctuary reefs, ones that they're going to be closed and they can provide larvae for the rest of the bay.
That's
so
correct.
Yeah, that's one of the
And
things we're looking
relaying
at.
oysters, they say if you relay them 10 days later, you can go catch them. They've purified and got all the contaminants out of their system, so then they're fit for human consumption. That's true too, but that provided a big benefit to the western end of the bay, providing the spat, because as I said, the currents from east to west, from Dog Island to Indian Pass. That's traditionally the currents of the bay. With the wind and the water flows that you're talking about in March and June, would take that spat and send it to the west end of the bay. We're not getting that now. Why? Because that nursery that Mr. Lockley was referring to is gone. So that needs to be something else that needs to be considered by your group in your studies.
Yep.
That needs to be planted. And it don't need to be planted 10 years from now. It needs to be planted tomorrow and get that back to going. But anyways, I'll let the chairman, he said he's got some other comments, but.
Well, can I just say, we are looking for input on things like that, where to put, these traditional reefs. We can try putting stuff wherever is sensible.
And originally I was a member of the advisory panel, but every time y'all had a meeting, it was on Tuesday. Or a Wednesday where I've spent all day down here on Tuesday, now I got to take another day off my job on Wednesday. I couldn't participate. I mean, I just can't take all week and take off and go to all these meetings. I gotta have another job.
Yeah, I thought we had accommodated you. I apologize if we didn't. But
Well, I'm not good on Zoom and all that because if I'm on my other job, I pay attention to my other job. I can't just knock off and go get on a computer.
oh, believe me, I understand being distracted during Zoom calls. Yeah.
I mean, I gotta work. I gotta make a living too, you know, for my family. But I do have a lot of insight of what needs to be done in this bay because that's what I do. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. After I got out of college, I went to work in the seafood industry. I don't shrimp and I don't oyster, but I'm working on the hill, but I'm still in the seafood industry. And as I said, my company has oyster leases that are now non-productive because there is no spat at that end of the bay, the western end of the bay. So I not only do it, but I live it, you know, and I'm very concerned about our entire ecosystem collapsing because of the lack of oysters purifying the water in this bay. You've seen it happen in Tampa Bay, you've seen it happen in Chesapeake Bay, and it can happen here. And what frustrates me the most is like the Everglades down there with the sugarcane farms and all the contaminated water coming out of that causing these algae blooms off of Fort Myers and all. We're going to have the same thing here. 20 years from now, without the water flows that we need, and this place collapses, everybody can say, oh my God, let's spend $100 million to try to fix the problem. No, we should have fixed the problem in the beginning. We wouldn't have had the problem. But, you know,
But
I don't have a certificate where I am a, quote, scientist. So what I understand and what I know is not taken very seriously because I don't have the credentials. But
Well,
I've lived it.
I don't know that that's.
I've lived it.
I don't know that that's true. Actually,
Oh,
we
it
do.
is.
We
It
do
is.
take
It is.
the opinions of our stakeholders seriously because
Oh,
we
I'm
know
not saying
that.
y'all don't. I'm saying above you.
Oh,
Your
there's lots of
federal
people above
delegation,
me,
Your
yeah.
state delegation, and everybody else. If you ain't got this little piece of paper saying you know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're talking about. But when you live it, I'm sure you know what you're talking about because it's your bottom line. It's whether you make a living or you don't make a living. But I'm also smart enough to know that, you know, there's certain goals that you can achieve and certain other goals you can achieve. So you got to work towards the ones you can achieve and try to make the best of any given situation. And I think that's what y'all are trying to do, and I appreciate it. I'm just giving you a little bit of my insight as someone that doesn't oyster for a living but knows the importance of an oyster.
Well, you know, next year we're starting again, so we'll circle back and see if there's a time that you can make it. If you would still like to participate, we'd value your input.
I'm gonna relent to the chair where he can
Are you
get some
good?
questions out there.
Well, Dr. Brooke, thank you for everything you presented today. It's a very wide and range of issues when we start talking about the bay and oysters and the oyster quality and all these other things that have been mentioned several times. I want to do my best not to rehash anything else that other commissioners have said, because I think we all know and understand the issues that face our bay are multitudinous. It'd been nice if the Supreme Court would have ruled our way with the water, but the water coming down the river is not going to fix our problem. Several years back, the Corps quit dredging the river channel. There's not the flood of water 3 or 4 times a year like they used to do that would bring the nutrients that Commissioner Parrish spoke of. There are other things going on that we can't control. So while we're trying to focus on things we can control, like building up the beds, doing those kinds of things, I mean, the bottom line, I will say, I have the same, maybe I'm more easy to be found in where I work in an auto parts. But yes, I'm like Commissioner Lachlan. I have people constantly asking me about the timeline. And I know you can't answer that because y'all are giving a reference to the people that are going to do the management. I understand that. But that's maybe one of the things that needs to be communicated. That's what people want to know. It's good. They understand that the study has to go on. They understand there's an issue. They do understand there's an issue. But they also understand that when they ask about a timeline, they keep just getting deferred or either what seems like no answer. That's what people seem to have more of a problem with, other than well, it's looking a little bit better, maybe we'll know more later. And I know that's the nature of science, but that's, if I could be honest, that's what the people that talk to me are having the most issue with, because they look back in time, just like all of us do, in times where we have had problems with our bay. It was closed for a short period of time and it bounced right back. We know from what you've said here today, the issue is the bed material, the bed's not being there. But I think that's one of the things that's frustrated, because I'm guilty of it. I know we all are. Anytime we look back, we always remember the good things in the past. It's good that our mind works that way, right? Mm. We don't always remember the bad and the struggle we went through and the way things were. We remember the good things. So if I'm honest, people remember that they were able to go make a living. And I know people today that have good jobs. They have state jobs. They work many different segments of society that have personally told me if the bay opened back up, they would quit their job and go back oystering. Because I guess it's the whole thing of the old man in the sea. Mm. They grew up doing it. That's what's in their blood. That's what their families have done for generations, and that's what they want to do. So without rehashing other things that other commissioners have said, I think the big thing they're looking for is a timeline. I am thankful to see that the lengthy document that APSI was working on was being condensed into a few small segments, because let's be honest, if they're not actionable items, it's just going to exist as a plan.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any way to take action on them. So I'm excited to understand and see that today. But other than that, to try to not cover what other commissioners have asked, I won't ask any questions. I defer. I think they've been covered by what others have asked today.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I tell you what, be a good thing, and it'll put people to work. It'll put somebody to work. You said y'all was gonna ask somebody to let water come down at a certain time. Well, right about long enough, with that new cut out there, your water not gonna stay in. It's going right through that cut. But if you ask, when you ask them that, you ask them to put a floodgate there and have somebody to operate the floodgate to let the boats in and out. You can trap that water and it'll go east and west. And
so,
then somebody can let them boats in with open that floodgate back and forth and it won't stay open. That's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard and looked at closing Sykes Cut, right? Well, that's going to be a problem because people use it. But the floodgates, yeah, like a lock or something like that. So what I've asked our modelers to do is close Sykes Cut with the model, see where it goes, see what happens. Because
I wouldn't close it. That's the main transportation for the boat. I mean, they have to go a lot of miles going out the mother passes. You go through there, you're saving a lot of miles.
I mean, I agree with you. It wasn't there. It's not supposed to be there, and so managing it is probably a good idea. But
they own it. They should
that's
manage it.
What is it? Department of Transportation or Army Corps or somebody else's?
No telling.
Yeah. No.
Before my time, anyway.
Yeah. I would ask them to manage it instead of closing it, because that's a shorter way to the people to go to work or go fishing anyway. If you close that.
If I may, Dr. Brooke, so you were saying that you had them do a model where there basically is no cut to see where the water is going? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that's what I've asked them to do. Yeah, they're still fooling around with their meshes at the moment. But yeah, I've asked them to do that because I'm curious. I mean, you can see from the model that it goes in and out, but most of the water goes out through West Pass. So be curious to see what difference it makes to the salinity map when you close Sykes Cut, because that could give us some leverage to maybe do what Mr. Lockley suggested, or close it, or do something about it.
Yeah.
Well, you'll let us know the outcome to that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because again, there's not one issue we can fix. They're about 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's what makes it very challenging, if we're honest.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's made it like it is now.
And it's not just the water coming in through Sykes Cut, it's the sand that is moving around. It's pushed a lot of sand in and it's buried some reefs. And so, yeah, you mess around with nature and there's lots of consequences that you don't even plan for. And you just have to deal with later.
Yeah, the only question I will ask, Doctor, because we have talked about it, but I don't know if it's been asked directly as a question. So in the what's being studied as far as putting back material for reefs, I guess you're also wanting to put back material what's in places that are otherwise known as polluted waters or coon bars, so that they can help provide the seed, if it were, for the rest of the bay. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one thing we're looking at. So the summer closure is one of the management options, as Mr. Parrish suggested. That was suggested by an oysterman. So there are areas also in the bay, you know, as you know, the summer closures are because of water quality, mostly. So we had the FDACS, had a presentation from Portia at FDACS, and she showed that the water quality is going down. You know, especially in the summer. So some of those areas might be, we don't want to be putting sanctuary reefs or reefs that can't be harvested in the fishing areas. So we are looking at some of those areas that might be closed for water quality to provide spat for the other areas. So it's not going to interfere with the fishery, but it's going to build up the oysters in the bay to help with the settlement. Yeah.
Well, I was just I forgot to mention that these coon oysters you're talking about growing up next to the marsh, they absolutely contribute to the overall health of the bay. And very seldom are they ever harvested. So, you know, I'd like to see the coon bars stay where they're at and not be harvested and provide the spat and all that would help resupplement the bay. And also when you're talking about closing Sykes Cut, as Commissioner Locklear was talking about, you need to look at the amount of contaminants that will be trapped in this bay. They won't be flushing out in and out of Sykes Cut along with some fresh water. They'll be trapped here. Now, and I've had this argument or a statement with a lot of different people. They said, well, Nick's Hole, back in the 60s, we caught big old oysters down there. And we did all that. Yeah, but you didn't have the health control people in town like you do now. They didn't go test the oysters. They were big, they were pretty, we caught them, we ate them. Just that simple. It ain't that way now. It's all about water quality and are they fit for human consumption. You didn't have that back in the 60s and all that. And actually Sykes Cut, or there was a cut, the island had already been washed into back in the 1800s in that same Pacific spot. If you go back and look at an archive, there's pictures. I've seen the pictures of where it was already naturally washed into right there. They just went in there and opened it up, true enough, to allow safe passage. But it was already washed into and was already open, naturally. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason they chose it. But the other thing, you mentioned harmful algal blooms. So Carenia brevis is the red tide pathogen, right? So we're part of the FWRI program. We're going to be monitoring water quality, you know, for Carenia in the bay. So there's some Carenia, or there was a couple of weeks ago, some red tide down inside the bay, just down by Little St. George. Right, it's not very high, but it was there, and so that pathogen likes salt water, not fresh water. So another aspect of this is the red tide being flushed in through Sykes Cut from the ocean as the tide goes back and forth. And so would controlling that water keep the fresh water in the bay? And you're right, it'll trap whatever's coming down the river. Fresh water, good stuff and bad.
Tide.
Yeah.
Including red tide, because you cut out that flushing action.
Yeah, but red tide doesn't like fresh water. So some do, some harmful algal blooms do, but that one in particular doesn't. So yeah, there's, as Commissioner Jones said, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You know, as I see the summary of our conversations this morning, it would be my hope that through all this process that there becomes an outcome report that has specific actionable items in it. And we've already talked about some of the stars of that. I've heard about the recruitment issues. We've heard about the habitat development. And that Corps of Engineers, we heard about how that water is controlled in different ways, and I'm just using these as key words. But I would really like to see, in addition to that layman's progress report as we go along, an outcome report that's actionable and a recipe on how to start the action, so that we here as a commission, in the world-famous world of oysters right here, can begin to affirm for you all of those issues and carry them forward for our legislative and federal action.
Okay. We could use the help.
Good, you bet.
Any more questions, Commissioners?
Thank you for what you do, man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have something, Mr. Brown?
I do. So in anticipation of a question I'll probably get from Commissioner Bolt here in reference to your FWC meeting that you wanted. So I don't know if Dr. Brooks is aware that Commissioner Bolt started this process where he's trying to get FWC to have a round table that would include you and other scientists together, and then FWC would be responsible for making a presentation to the board. So Commissioner Bolt, well, commissioners and Mr. Chairman, just want you to know FWC is, because of the holidays coming up and their next FWC commission meeting, they have pushed that meeting onto January or perhaps February, but they have been in contact with me and know that that's coming soon.
Very good.
Okay?
Right. We sure want you involved, please.
I just wanted
Yes,
to
I'd like to.
let
Thank you.
Dr. Brooks know that, and everyone else, you know, in the room.
Thank you.
That we haven't forgotten about it, they just the scheduling. You
Understood.
know,
I read
Red
that.
Tide kind of threw more than you guys realized off for FWC, but that refers to the management, Commissioner Parrish. So,
Yep.
you know, they need to know how the board feels about the management of the bay.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Dr. Brooke, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate
Really
you.
do.
I'm off the hook.
Come back.
So,
And I
I
survived.
think so. I think so.
Come back soon. Come back again soon, please.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so we have a couple of decisions to make here. You have a 10 o'clock and an 11 o'clock public hearing, and then we go back to the regular agenda. So I don't see the 10 o'clock, which is the capital improvement. Mark is going to come in for that, being that long. You want to just go ahead with that and see how close it takes us to the 11 o'clock public hearing. Attorney Schuler will run that one, and then we pick back up with the agenda from there, sir.
But we do have them scheduled for certain times. We can't do it before that time.
But we can do it
But
after.
we should be doing it as quickly as we can after it. I think that the next issue on the agenda about St. George Island Corporation might last a deal longer. So I do think we need to go ahead and go to those public hearings and get those over with.
All right, let me, do you want to take a 5? Let me go get Mark, get him set up, and he'll
Yes,
be ready
please.
to deal with your 5-year capital
Yep,
improvement
let's
schedule.
do that.
Today we're going to discuss preventative medicine. If you come to Weems and establish a primary care physician, even if you're feeling great, considering your family history and other risk factors, it's important to follow up and pursue preventative medicine. Getting some basic labs, thinking about the future. Just want to sit down and talk to somebody who has a little bit of medical knowledge and can kind of point you in the right direction. I think that's the role of your primary care physician, taking some time, discussing your concerns, talking to you about your family history, about what's going on in your life, and intervening and helping you to understand kind of what's going on with your current medical conditions.
Come inside and check us out. We have something for everyone. Hello, welcome to Apalachicola Chocolate and Coffee Company. From our handmade chocolates, fudges, delicious old-fashioned caramel, pies, cookies, including the largest Greek wedding and macaroons you've ever seen. We also make the Italian-style ice cream called gelato, which is adult-tested and kid-approved. We have a full menu coffee bar, from lattes and cappuccinos to some of our signature drinks, such as our affogatos and black bottom coffees. And don't forget about the famous crafted coffee blend. We also roast our coffee beans on site, so it's super fresh. Don't like coffee? We also have teas and lemonade. If you're hungry, we serve breakfast sandwiches on our homemade bread, or we have New York water bagels. Or try the biscuits and gravy that are to die for. We also have lunch sandwiches and soups. We do carry some gluten-free and vegan options as well. Hear what some locals have to say.
I love the biscuits and gravy.
You know something? The coffee here is great.
I love the ice cream of the chocolate company.
So come check us out and stay a while. In here, it's just like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Oh, hey, Dan.
Hi, I'm Carol Landis. I'm a professional realtor in love with St. George Island. When my husband and I and our dogs moved here in 2002, it was the beginning of an adventure that has never grown old in a community that is amazing. If you're thinking about moving to St. George Island or investing in our world-class real estate, then this community will be as important to you as the sand and surf.
Well, Cara to me is much more than an agent. She's become a friend, and since we bought the house, we've needed work done, and she knows everybody there is that can help us with that.
One of the key elements for the historical growth and value of St. George Island real estate is the fact that it's a great place to vacation and to live. The beauty of the Gulf of Mexico with its white sand beaches and blue sky has always been a magnet for me. It was love at first sight. As your realtor, I can help educate you on the various aspects of buying and owning coastal properties. From taxes to coastal setback lines to where to find the best oysters, it's all part of being your realtor.
Too often our friends tell us of it being a hardship to buy a house, and the agent was gone as soon as the closing. We've had quite the opposite experience with Cara.
If you're looking to buy or sell real estate on St. George Island, I'd love to work with you. Please call or text me at 850-653-7753.
Fisherman's Choice Bait and Tackle has all you need for your day of fishing. They have fresh and saltwater bait, an unmatched selection of mirror lures, and a wide selection of Berkeley Gulp, plus fresh and live bait and all the rigs and tackle you need for a great day of fishing, including brands like Penn and Shimano. They are also the only bait and tackle shop in Franklin County where you can get a fishing license. And don't miss their wide selection of marine supplies, coolers, and more. Fisherman's Choice is located at 330 Highway 98 in East Point. Our beautiful piece of paradise. Please make sure you visit our local shops, restaurants, galleries, and take some time to experience something different and take a fishing trip or tour with one of our experienced guides. Our neighbors and their businesses are the heartbeat of our community. Thank you for visiting, and remember to shop local, eat local, and fish local. This message is brought to you by the Apalachicola Bay Chamber of Commerce. Can it be near the beautiful beaches of Franklin County? Tune in to Forgotten Coast TV, Franklin County's local cable channel. Watch shows and videos about our beautiful area, including our beaches, museums, shops, and more. Watch it wherever you are on Roku and Amazon TV. Also, make sure you like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. Forgotten Coast TV is Beachin' TV. Download the new Florida's Forgotten Coast app. See the latest beach conditions, things to do, places to get delicious seafood, and great shopping along Florida's Forgotten Coast, plus more. Also, check out the Explore the Forgotten Coast Passport and Forgotten Coast Foodie Passport to be entered for your chance to win a trip to the Forgotten Coast. Download the new Florida's Forgotten Coast app and the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. This mobile app brought to you by the Franklin County Tourist Development Council.
Franklin County Board of County Commission now back in session. We're going to go ahead and move on the agenda to our scheduled public hearings that we're kind of behind on. First one should have began somewhere at or around 10 a.m. 5-year capital improvement schedule. Mr. Currington, I turned over to you, sir.
Okay. This is something that the county's supposed to do every year to update our capital improvement schedule and our comprehensive plan. This is just a list of capital improvements the county is planning on making over the next 5 years. Really the main benefit of doing it is on some of the grants we get points for having the projects on the capital improvement schedule.
Very well.
Yeah.
So, Attorney Schuler, since this is a public hearing, should we call for public comments before the commission discusses it, or what do we need to do?
That is the ordinary procedure.
Okay.
The description of the ordinance followed by public comment, followed by commissioners.
Okay. And who would be doing the description of the ordinance? All right.
If you just read the caption of the ordinance, Mark.
This is an ordinance amending the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan to adopt a new 5-year schedule of capital improvements.
Okay. At this time, is there any public comment about this issue? Anyone at all? You don't have to have turned in a card. This is a public hearing. Mr. Morone, could you check and see if there's anyone online that has a raised hand that wants to comment about this?
Yes, sir. If anyone on Zoom that's attended virtually would like to speak on this issue, please do that by clicking the raise hand icon. Then we will allow you to speak to address this item as a public hearing. Asking once, twice, final time. Anyone would like to speak on this attending virtually? Please indicate by raising your hand. Mr. Chairman, no one indicated such.
Okay. So at this time, Commissioners, do you have any questions, or I guess I'll entertain a motion on what you guys want to do. Yes, Commissioner Bolt.
You know, Mark, it has just occurred to me this morning that this single document appears to be a very condensed roadmap and a register of what's going to be happening in the next 5 years hence on one sheet of paper. The major implications of this, would that be what this is?
Yes, as far as the capital improvements the county is planning, yes.
Yeah, because everybody's asking about these in general. When are you going to do this and so on, yeah. Yes. Now, some of the things that are missing are already obligated monies that we've talked about, and they're not part of the future here because they're already obligated.
Yes, this is a future plan.
Yeah.
Projects that are currently underway or are not necessarily listed here.
Okay, and you're saying maybe every year at this time this is upgraded, is that right?
We're supposed to upgrade this every year before the end of the year.
Okay. Sometime
between when we pass our budget and the end of the year.
Okay, very good.
Mark, I want to ask you a question, sir.
Okay.
Does this record everything, even the stuff the FDOT is doing?
This includes everything, I believe, off of FDOT's 5-year work plan.
Okay. Are they still having their work plan to pave from South Franklin Street and East Point to the Carabello Bridge next year? Because I don't see it on here.
This is the county's.
Okay, that's okay.
Oh. That would be the state's project. These are
okay.
Things the counties has to pay for.
Okay, sounds good. I wasn't trying to mix the two. I was just trying to ask the question in case someone else was looking at it and saying, okay, well, what happened to all this? So this is our side. Right. Okay.
And that's a good question, though. Can we get a a state report that looks like this or something similar to forecast?
Yes.
Yes, I mean.
Can we?
No.
Okay.
I don't know that the state has one entire thing all put together, but DOT has their 5-year plan of all the state projects they're doing and also all of the grants they're giving to the local government for our projects.
And it's also seems to be a living document too, Commissioner Bolt.
Yeah.
It might be one thing if you got it today, 3 months from now, it might show a little bit different. You know what I mean? They change it as they need to or amend it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not just, okay, I got it, so you're good for this whole year. No, it might change 2 months from now. So, all right, pleasure of the board.
So move to adopt.
Okay. So I have 2 motions in 2 seconds. How shall I record this? Now, the motion was made by Commissioner Ferris, and the first second I heard was Commissioner Lockley. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is a 5-0 vote. Mr. Carrington, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
See if I can get back to where I was. So our next public hearing is on the beach warning flag system.
Attorney Schuler has 2 official minutes. He has
Yeah,
to
we
wait
have
for.
2 minutes for that, so.
There you go.
I don't know if something else. Board
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
It's not 11, is it? It's close. It's close.
Not according to Verizon.
Well, you didn't go to a central time zone and come back and you're stuck an hour behind us, have you? I've done that before. Been late to work and all those kind of things. I thought I had an hour.
What I'll also do, take the same time to update the board. I discussed the FWC meeting. What I did not state, it's in my report also, that the state fire marshal is also looking for some dates to come to bring the staff here and basically have a workshop as it relates to our volunteer fire departments with, you know, what is there anything we can do to make the situation better? Are we doing it right? You know, so when I have those dates, I will also present that to the board, and you guys could help me schedule those workshops. Oh, that workshop, I should say.
Thank you.
See, I'm sorry, Attorney Schuler, I have the Pierce in me, so I spoke too fast. I didn't slow down, so we'd get to 11 o'clock.
So you're Alan Jr.?
No, please.
Well, I wouldn't side with you with that, sir, no.
And to go back quickly to Commissioner Bolt on checking with the state, so what, the chairman is correct, that changes every day, so what you could do is
Mr. Chairman, it's 11 o'clock.
See, he just cuts me off like that. Anyway, we'll talk later.
We'll catch you up.
Yeah, we'll catch
You bet.
I think he was doing his best to make you feel like Mr. Pierce. Go ahead, sir. I've heard that happen before in these commission chambers. Go ahead, sir.
You ready?
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioners, public, this is an ordinance providing that the beach warning flag system shall exclude the body of water known as St. George Sound, revoking all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. It's roughly a page and a half ordinance, but the summary is the purpose of the ordinance is to exclude Carabello Beach from the beach warning flag system because it's really not part of the NOAA beach flag warning system. NOAA provides a beach warning flag system for the Gulf of Mexico. It does not provide warning or beach flag warning data for an inland body of water like St. George Sound. So if there are no questions from the commissioners, it would now be appropriate to take public comment.
Any commissioners have any questions? All right. Anybody in the public wish to comment on this potential change in the ordinance? Anyone in the room? You don't have to have filled out a card. It's a public hearing. Okay, seeing none, sir, see if there might be any that are attending by Zoom, please.
Anyone attending the meeting virtually by Zoom, if you would like to speak, please select the raise hand feature. You'll be recognized and allowed to address the board on this item.
And while we're waiting, and just for the benefit of the public, I know the commissioners are aware that there is already another ordinance on the books which allows for the closure of Carabello Beach during declared states of emergency. So even though Carabello Beach would not be subject to the beach flag warning system, there's still an ordinance on the books that would allow for the protection of the public and requiring them to remove themselves from St. George Sound during declared states of emergency, declared either by this board or by the state of Florida.
That's it, asking twice. Again, select the raise hand feature on your smart device. Asking final time. Mr. Chairman, no one would like to address the board on this item.
Okay. To clarify, also, Attorney Schuler, isn't it true that once we declare a state of emergency, it doesn't really matter what the flags are NOAA showing as being representing the flags? That kind of is an overriding factor for the county to be able to control our beaches, correct?
Yes, sir. We actually have presently, or after the adoption of this ordinance, it will be a belts and suspenders approach. We have one ordinance which requires everyone to remove themselves during double red flags, which typically are associated with states of emergency, but also when there is a declared state of emergency. That ordinance I referred to earlier about removing, the sheriff having the authority to remove people from St. George Sound, that ordinance also includes the Gulf of Mexico. So,
okay. Yeah, because one of the issues we run into that public might not be aware that we really run into during the last couple of declared states of emergencies during storms that did not wind up coming here, NOAA was issuing all these warnings for tropical storms and tropical storm force winds and other things, but they weren't updating the beach flag side of it. So we were running into an issue with that. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at changing this as well. Okay, commissioners, it's a pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to adopt this ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and adopt by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any more discussion from the commission before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
that concludes the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, now we will go back in our agenda a couple of spaces to Ms. Shannon Bothwell about the issue of St. George Island Corporation. Ms. Bothwell, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Good morning, I'm Shannon Bothwell. It's nice to see you all again, commissioners and staff. Thank you for hearing this request. The request that you're asked to consider today is to have a non-binding, free straw poll of the residents of St. George Island as to whether they would like to pursue incorporation of the island. But I think it would be helpful to just give you a very brief overview of the incorporation process so you can understand how this request fits into the overall picture. So, Chapter 165 of the Florida Statutes explains how to form a local government. It has some technical requirements, which St. George Island does not meet, but that doesn't matter. These are relics of a bygone era. Every city that has been incorporated since 2000 has not met these technical requirements. What really matters is a review process that the legislature undertakes, looking at a feasibility study and particularly a 5-year budget. What the legislature and state agency staff, including the Department of Revenue and other agencies, really care about is a new municipality going to be financially sound? Does it have the capacity to do the work that a city needs to do? Or will it become a financial burden to the state? So the good news is St. George Island has a very strong tax base. We don't foresee this being a problem, but it is, however, a 6-month agency review process that you have to go through. Assuming that that is successful, then your local delegation, which in our case is Representative Jason Schoaf and Senator Loran Osley, would introduce a local bill in the legislature to authorize incorporation. And then the final step would be a referendum of the voters that would be an ultimate up or down vote. So how this request today fits into that picture is that our local delegation has asked, before we proceed down this path, to do a non-binding straw poll of the voters. This is something that the Board of County Commissioners can authorize. I've corresponded with the Supervisor of Elections, and she has confirmed that if the board instructs her to put this issue on the ballot at the next regularly scheduled election, which would be next year's primaries, that this would be at no cost whatsoever to the voters. And again, this is non-binding. It is simply an opportunity for the people of St. George Island to express their opinion in a democratic way as to whether they would like to pursue the potential incorporation. So that's the request. Did anyone have any questions that I could answer about that? I know I kind of went through that process really quickly.
I got a question.
Go ahead, sir.
What you're telling us, it don't matter what we said. I mean, you know, if the state don't do it, why you got to do all this?
Right, so it is ultimately the state legislature that decides if incorporation is appropriate. But as I said, our local delegation, particularly Representative Jason Schoaf, has asked that we have a demonstration of support for this idea before the bill gets introduced to the legislature. So he has requested this process.
Well, I don't understand if the state, what I'm trying to say is, they put laws on the book, and we supposed to go by. And what you said was, that don't matter, or none of that matter. But anyway, I don't understand that.
Well, everything that we're talking about is a lawful process. There is a statute that specifically authorizes county commissions, like this board, to have this type of opinion poll. Again, it's non-binding, it's at no cost to the taxpayers, on issues of public importance. That's clearly authorized by Florida statutes, as is the formation of cities. This is also authorized by Florida statutes. So that's everything we're doing here is a lawful process.
Okay.
So I think it might be better for the board, before we make any kind of motion or have any real discussion. We have a lot of people that want to speak on this issue. So I think if that's the end of your presentation, I think it'd be better for us to move to public comments and then come back to it. I think it'd be better. And the reason I say that is we've in the past with other issues have made our motion in a second, and then we kind of feel like we're locked in before we've heard from the residents that have said they want to speak. If that's okay with you, that's how we're proceeding.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Jones. So I'd just like to say that I hope you will give the people of St. George Island the opportunity to express their opinions in a democratic fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm pulling these in no particular order. This is just how they are. Ms. Teresa Sporer, do you wish to speak on this item or no? This is the first one up. Please come to the podium. Please come to the podium. You're good. You're good. Somebody's got to be first, right?
Somebody's got to be first. I've lived here 42 years on St. George Island. That's the first time I've seen that lady. Who gets to decide all of a sudden we're going to incorporate? Where does that idea come from and why? I liked it the way it was when I came here. You guys have been doing a fine job of keeping it up. I don't want to pay double for that. I want to live there until I die. I want to die in old age. But what they're talking about is going to cost me in ways I can't afford. And that's what I got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Teresa. All right. You're going to think this is stacked if I do it, though, so I'll go to that. Mr. Larry Hale.
Well, this is the first time I've ever met this woman or seen this woman, but she pretends to represent, I guess, a faction on St. George Island I have no knowledge of. But most of the people I know on St. George Island have no knowledge of meetings they've been having, or they haven't advertised their meetings if they've had meetings about incorporating the island. But I think we've been doing just fine. The island's come a long way from the days when we had no roads and we could bait all the vacant lots and have dove shoots. We could hunt the final hogs off the island and get them off the island. We had a pretty good marina that I could operate my commercial boat out of at one time. We lost that in the storm. But, you know, there's things we need. We need to get that drainage study done, and we need to get drainage in the central business district. That's a desperate need. We need to protect the right-of-ways on the roads because we have people sticking telephone poles out to the edge of the asphalt, which is very dangerous. You have children can't even get out of the road. We have 20-foot sections of county property being taken over by people that buy the corner lot that think, you know, they can plant trees and vegetation right out to the edge of the asphalt, creating a blind corner. I'm surprised nobody's got killed there yet. In addition, we had one recently start building a house, and they went in there and raked all the beautiful oak trees off of it and left nothing but bare sand. This is county property. We shouldn't just be allowing it to be taken over. But these are things the county can address without having a city government. But one of the most important things I see right now is drainage study. And we do need some paving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. All right. Ms. Barbara Sanders.
Full disclosure, Teresa Sporer is my sister. I'm here to speak in opposition to incorporation in general and to this supposedly no-cost poll. And Commissioner Lockley said it exactly. We have a law in the books for when you have the population that can sustain a municipality, and it's 175,000 people, I think. So for someone to just dismiss that policy as a bygone error mistake, I think is short-sighted. I think what's going to happen if a small community like ours were to incorporate, and I don't believe it will get there, but you will find quickly that taxes will be maxed out. People who have retired, shall I brag, and have to pay a double layer of taxes, then will be priced off of the island, as will renters, because the people that these folks want to vote on this ultimate resolution are not property owners, but residents. So you could own a property and live in Tallahassee, you wouldn't get to vote. So when they talk about what's democratic, they don't mean everyone on the island. Commercial properties would not be able to vote because they aren't residents. There are issues that have to be addressed. Larry talked about some. I agree with those. Some of our problems, like the drainage, are caused by the development of those lots where they weren't required to keep their own stormwater. So I would look very suspiciously at this kind of seductive idea that it'll be no cost, we'll keep your taxes at 3 mils, everything's gonna be hunky-dory, we're still gonna have this great sheriff for no cost. All of these illusory promises, I think if we did take this step, would go quickly awry. So I do not, I'm asking you not to agree to this straw poll. I think what Jason Schoaf is saying is, if it were popular, I would agree with it. But I don't even think Mr. Schoaf wants to know about only a few people on the island. He would want a broad idea, and that would include people that don't live there, because I have seen in some of the communications from this group, they want to do things like restrict access to the beach. Well, that is everybody's constituents, not just St. George Islanders. So it's a big issue, it's an unnecessary issue, and I think we should basically just kill it right now and be done with it, because it's been a big waste of people's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Teresa Bestor?
I'm Teresa Bester, and I'm a resident of St. George, and actually I just came to ask you to have the straw poll because people are very excited about this. There's a lot of discussion going on about the island, people for it and people against it. I think if we had a poll, we would know exactly how people really did feel. If they're in favor of it, that's one thing, we would move forward. If they're not in favor of it, then that would stop. I do see some things that we could do with incorporation, with the additional funds. For example, the flooding on some of the roads, we could take care of that. The 3 mils that is suggested as the tax rate would entitle us to revenue sharing at the state level. I do think there's some good things about it, and I'm actually in favor of it myself. I'm in the minority, I definitely feel. But I do think if we had the straw poll that was put in onto an existing ballot, not a special one, we would see exactly where people felt. I did participate in all the workshops, and we had a brief informal poll on that. It seemed to me that it was about 50-50, people in favor and people opposed. Now, again, that was a small population of people who were interested in what was going on, so I don't know if that would reflect the actual population that is on St. George. But we're hearing a lot of information from people who do not live there, but have a very proprietary interest in St. George because they own rental property or spend a lot of their vacation time down there. But they're not actual residents. They're not the people who actually live there and would be involved in the voting. So I'm just asking you to please consider having the straw poll so that we would know for sure exactly how the residents felt. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Teresa. Where's Mr. Rohn? Mr. Rohn, are there anybody that's online?
I will, if that's, so if anyone participating in this meeting via Zoom virtually, if you would like to speak on this matter, I ask that you use your smart device and you select the raise hand feature so we can identify you and allow you to speak. Again, if you'd like to speak, raise hand feature. Ask them twice. Asking a final time. No raised hands from those attending virtually, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So we're done with the public input part of this. Yes, sorry. Oh, did you? Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Come on, Joe. I might not have gotten it, but that don't mean you didn't hand it in.
Well, I gave it to Shine, and anyway.
Oh, yes, that's the hand.
I wrote on the back of it, sorry. I was making my notes for other stuff on the back of it. That's me, not you. Sorry. Please proceed. State your name for the record.
I'm Joellen Bierman, and I live on St. George Island. I've been a resident there for 20 years. When I moved there, I didn't want anything. We live on a sandbar. I didn't want better roads. I drive a little slower. Water's not so good. You adjust, get Culligan water. You know, bottom line, yes, we live on a sandbar. We don't need more, and we don't need more cost. We're paying the county now to provide services. In corporation, we're going to be paying, we'll pay the sheriff's department more money to do what they're doing now. Well, and we don't need that cost. Yes, it would force the little people like me off the island that can afford to live there now because we live within our means. Teresa even mentioned, the last speaker, she was in the minority. To put this on a straw poll is a waste of everybody's time. Yes, the majority, they don't want it. They don't want to pay more money for services provided now. To have more control of their money, they're not going to have any. So, yes, I'm very much opposed to even putting it on the straw poll. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. So now that we're done with the public comment part of this, I would like to say a couple of things. I did a little bit of research, even just because we're talking about money here. That's what we're talking about is money. For the counties in our Apalachee region, the millage rate currently in Franklin County is 0.00547. That's the current millage rate. Gulf County is the closest to us. They're at 0.00680. Wakulla is at 0.00820. Liberty is 0.00932. Calhoun is 0.00990. Gadsden is at 0.00900. Jackson is 0.0744. Holmes is 0.00949. Jefferson is 0.00795, and Leon is 0.00831. None of these counties, except for Franklin, are dealing with the federal or state government owning 90% of their land. We have a very small tax base. Since I've been on this commission, our millage rate has went down almost 1 mil. No, we've not went back to the rollback rate every year, but we've done the best we can do to provide services with the monies that we're asking our residents to pay, our citizens to pay. I am the representative currently of this district, and I oppose this going even to a straw poll. And I want to make sure the rest of the commission is aware of that. We've done our best to tighten the belt and to keep it tight, and to think that I'm going to vote to, over time, make the whole island the plantation is not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing. I don't want to drive it out where only the people that can really afford to be there are there. There are too many people that have worked their whole life and are working right now, planning on retiring here. They already have the home, they've just not made it that far. But by one act of government, we can completely dismantle and derail their ambitions and their hopes and their dreams for living out their retirement here in Franklin County, and I'm opposed to that.
Motion to deny.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lockley.
To do what?
To deny.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Parrish. Any discussion before we vote?
There's no way. I don't think it's not fair what they're doing. If they talking about they're gonna run an island for 3 meals, there's no way. If you start up a city, your millage is gonna be more than 3 meals, more like 8. And I believe y'all need, if you're gonna do something like that, you need to inform the people right.
Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's a 5-0 vote. All right, up next, Ms. Erin Griffin, Fiscal Grant Manager and Coordinator.
Item A is a contract extension for Alligator Drive FEMA repairs.
On June 7th, 2021, the county issued the notice to proceed for the Alligator Drive hurricane repairs to contractor Anderson, Columbia. The contractor was given approximately 150 days to complete the project. Shortly after the issuance of the notice to proceed, issues with construction materials caused by COVID-19 disruptions within the supply chain started to delay the project. The principal source of the delay was the metal sheet piling material needed for the revetment walls. The contractor, engineers, and county staff had discussions with FEMA and the project designer, MRD, to try to find an alternative product that could be substituted for the sheet piles, but none were deemed to be as strong. Metal sheet pile suppliers had issues with inventory and were unable to even estimate a delivery date for several months into the project. The contractor has done as much of the work as possible without the critical sheet pile component during the hours of the day that the tide is low enough to get work accomplished. This is not the only FEMA restoration project that has been slowed by issues within the supply chain. The county was just recently able to issue the notice to proceed on the East Point Fishing Pier repairs due to a shortage in articulated block, and is awaiting issuance of the notice to proceed for the C30A washout repairs due to manufacturing delays related to the concrete webbing used for shoulder stabilization. The supplier of the metal sheet piles has finally released an estimated delivery date of late December. Due to this delay and materials beyond the control of the contractor, the engineers recommend granting a 120-day contract extension change order from the latest estimate of delivery date for the sheet pile material. Board action to approve the attached change order number 1 for the FEMA repairs of Alligator Drive project.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt.
Second.
Second by 2, Commissioner Parrish and Commissioner Lockley, Commissioner Ward, excuse me. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay. Item B is board action on the LAP CR 370 Alligator Drive construction contract. At the last meeting, the board issued a notice of award for the LAP CR 370 Alligator Drive multi-use path project to Pygott Asphalt and Site Work LLC. The construction contract documents are in order and the bid bonds and insurance requirements have been verified. Board action to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the attached construction contract with Pygott Asphalt and Site Work LLC.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt. Second by 2, Commissioner Lockley and Commissioner Parrish. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
The next item is C, budget resolutions for fiscal year 2020-2021. Attached are 9 resolutions for the adoption of unanticipated revenues as part of the end of the fiscal year bookkeeping. These funds were not included in your original adopted 2020-2021 budget because at the time of the budget adoption, they were unanticipated. Florida Statute 129 allows a county 60 days after the end of a fiscal year to incorporate unanticipated revenues into the prior year's budget. There will be a second installment of resolutions presented at your next meeting to conclude this process. The first resolution is for $1,843,642 in state grant funds received from the Florida Department of Transportation relative to the SCOP widening and resurfacing of CR 67. The second resolution is for $1,055,568 in state and federal FEMA funds with match provided by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity relative to the Hurricane Michael repairs of Alligator Drive. The third resolution is $42,125 in state and federal FEMA funds with match provided by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity relative to the Hurricane Michael repairs of the C30A washouts. The fourth resolution is for $35,963 in state and federal FEMA funds relative to the Hurricane Michael repairs at Island View Park. The fifth resolution is for $55,921 in federal grant funds received from the U.S. Department of Transportation for the LAP Tallahassee Street Sidewalk Project. The sixth resolution is for $1,172,335 in state grant funds received from the Florida Department of Transportation for the scrap and SCOP widening and resurfacing of CR30A projects. The seventh resolution is for $97,385 in state grant funds provided by the Florida Department of Transportation for the SGI landscaping project. The eighth resolution is $18,168 in state grant funds provided by the Florida Department of Transportation for the SCOP resurfacing of Timber Island Road. The ninth resolution is for an additional $125,200 in permitting revenues used for the operations of the Franklin County Building Department. Board action to adopt the 9 attached budget resolutions.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a 5-0 vote. Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Aaron before we move forward? I know they probably don't have any questions, but I have to, you know. Go ahead, Michael. Please proceed, Mr. Merle.
All right, Commissioners, we're still on page 7. Item A of my report, at your October 19th meeting, 3 Florida Department of Transportation public transportation grant agreements for the airport were presented for your approval and the chairman's signature. Those were approved. As required by FDOT, resolutions for each PTGA should have been included for approval, but was not. Therefore, resolutions for the $750,000 stormwater and drainage improvement project, $150,000 for the obstruction removal, and $100,000 to design and replace the airfield vault generator resolutions require your approval today. Board action to approve and authorize the chairman's signature on the 3 public transportation grant agreements for the airport as described.
So move.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bolt, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a 5-0.
Chairman, I think you should ask the attorney if you could just say everybody motion, everybody second.
I'm sitting here thinking about
Wasn't that
that.
something?
But I can't make motions or seconds, so in my seat. So.
Okay, we'll just say that. All right, moving on to B, at the May 18th regular meeting, the board authorized adding streetlights to Bluff Road. Attached, finally, is a proposal from Duke Energy to install 25 110-watt LED roadway streetlights. The lights will start at the curve, just past the graveyard, and continue past Magnolia Lane on Bluff Road. We're installing the lights and power poles that are already in place, which allows for $273 estimated monthly rental cost. After the installation, if there are any dark areas, I will request another quote from Duke Energy that will probably include a cost for a new power pole installation. So I need board action to approve and authorize the chairman's signature on the Duke Energy proposal to install those 25 streetlights on Bluff Road. Badly needed, and that took long enough to get there, Commissioner.
So move with comment.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Lockley. Commissioner Ward, please go ahead with your comment.
Ms. Morone, on this, I also have some concerns in my district, particularly at a bus stop with the time change. It's going to start getting darker, and there's safety issue with the children gathering at the bus stop. There is a light pole existing, and this particular bus stop that I'm talking about is on is kind of off Buck Road.
Okay.
There in East Point, and there is an existing pole. If we could just get with Mr. Collins, Duke, to see about getting a light placed on that pole.
Okay.
I have some other areas as well. I can send you a list later. That way we can send him a list all at once. Try to get some lights in areas that need to be, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, because I also have a list I'm working on for Commissioner Lockley. I just try to get, one area at a time, so we treat it like that. But yes, ma'am, if you send that to me right away, we'll start working on that ASAP.
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that probably all of us have probably had people come to us and talk to us, especially about school bus stops.
Yes.
So what we probably really need to do is coordinate with the school district, make sure for sure where the bus stop is. So we're doing it, not where somebody might say it is, but where it actually is, where the drivers are being told to stop. So we can do it in conjunction with them. Because again, I've had residents in my district express the same issues.
Okay.
Because when the time changes, they're out there and it's completely dark. That's just the way it is.
Yes.
They don't do that half-to-half thing no more?
No, sir.
They don't?
They sure don't.
They should.
No, they don't.
Mr. Chairman, are you saying identify the official bus stops throughout the county to be sure that those areas are lighted?
Well, no, what I'm saying, Commissioner Bolt, is to make sure we identify that the issues of the areas being brought to us by residents are actual bus stops.
Yeah.
That we're not trying to put up a light somewhere a bus stop actually isn't.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. So we're making sure that we're working in conjunction with the school. I wasn't, maybe I come across wrong, I wasn't trying to say that we were going to talk to the school about lighting every bus stop. You know what I mean? I know that might happen over time, but that's not what I was trying to intend to say.
Yeah, what I understand is you're saying if somebody says, like Commissioner Ward, put the light here, it's a bus stop, I'll verify that it is, then we put the light, okay.
Yeah. It needs to be done in conjunction with the school district.
Yes, sir.
With their traffic people.
This is a small county that,
Yeah.
I don't see why they don't do the bus, just door-to-door thing.
I really don't think they do. I could be wrong, sir, but I hate to speak for somebody else, but I really don't think they do.
Yeah, I will not speak for the school district, sir.
Let me shut my mouth.
Any more discussion before we vote on this motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Item C at the top of page 8, Commissioners. Commissioner Bolt requested a cost estimate from Robinson & Robinson to restripe with paint Alligator Drive, also known as CR 370, from US 98 to Gulf Shore Boulevard. The restriping project will include center line, edge lining, raised pavement markers for a total cost of $24,696. This will be a change order to the paving project and will be paid from District 2's paving funds. And Commissioner Bolt, I just want you to verify for the public that this has nothing to do with the other construction project that's going on. It's higher up, if I could say that, sir.
That's right. It just starts at Route 98 and goes inbound about 4.2 miles, ending there at Gulf Shore Boulevard, and it's particularly a very dark road, and all of that striping and everything has been worn off over the years, and this will be a big improvement for that area from a safety standpoint.
Okay.
So I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion, Commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Yes.
Moving on to D, sir. Last year, the state attorney's office next door requested flooring in their offices due to the condition of the current carpet, which has been there since the construction of this building in 2002, from what I understand. In reviewing all the offices in this building, including this meeting room, as you guys could just look at the carpet, it's time for an upgrade. While discussing this project with your clerk Maxwell, she stated her plans to reorganize her official records office to provide additional space for the public, and that will also require new flooring. So I'm seeking board authorization today to advertise for a request for proposals for new flooring in all the annex building offices, including this meeting room, and the clerk's official records office. My anticipation that the county will get a better price on this type of RFP rather than if we do it office by office.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion?
Yeah, we need to upgrade. It's been there 20 years since I've been here.
I like that idea of having extra space for the public. Yep, is that like a work table and a conference table and all that? They can spread out?
So
Good.
do their research in the official records office, Commissioner. It's easier for them to do that.
Good.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 5-0.
Item E, the City of Carabello is submitting a legislative appropriations request for roadway and drainage improvements on Baywood Drive in Carabello, and they're requesting a letter of support from the county. Baywood Drive is approximately 1.05 miles in length and suffers from street flooding during, and I quote from their request, medium and heavy rainfall events resulting in limited to no access to the many residential properties along Baywood Drive. End of quote. The letter will state that this project would be ranked number 3 on the county's priority list. The EOC and the new hospital facility are ranked number 1 and 2 respectively.
So move.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Bolt. Any commissioners have any questions or discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Item F, during the Commissioner's comments at your October 5th meeting, I was directed to research the options for the county to engage a public information officer. Ms. Courtney Bankston, she contacted surrounding counties and was told that this role is often fulfilled by administrative services staff in the counties. Currently, you have 2 staff members in the administrative services office, Ms. Erin Griffith and I. And our current workloads does not allow for the added duties as the county's public information officer. The school district and the sheriff has public information officers on their staff. In discussion with Mr. John Solomon about this subject, he suggested I schedule a meeting with Ms. Cynthia Clark as she provides that service to the TDC the Apalachicola Bay Chamber of Commerce, and on a limited role to the Seafood Festival Board. Ms. Griffith and I met with Mrs. Clark to discuss the possibility of her providing this service, which resulted in Mrs. Clark's proposal to create multiple news briefs on important county initiatives and posting that content either in blog posts on the county's website or through a social media post linked to the county's website. This service will be provided for less than $1,000 a month. Is the board in favor of a 6-month agreement for this service, or do you like to direct me to advertise for proposals? This fee would be paid from professional services. Commissioners, this would be basically just putting out information of what we do on a twice a month and some other issues. I will still defer that when there needs to be statements made during an emergency of some, declared or not an emergency, that information comes from your EOC, from Pam and her office. When the news, somebody in the news, TV, news media wants to speak about a certain item in a district, I would prefer that commissioner, I always try to get that commissioner to address the news, and you can get support from Mrs. Clark and, you know, on information on what to say, or from myself or Aaron, depending on what the subject is. But that's what I came up with, and I'm just here for the board's direction, basically, as to if we want to do this now, do you want to wait, what, tell me.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. We do need more transparency with our county and our discussions and our meetings and things of that nature. I know we have to be careful because of state laws, you know, sunshine law and things of that nature, public records laws. But obviously, I feel like, and I do agree with you, that you and Ms. Griffith are already overextended and do multiple roles. I don't particularly know what the running cost of a public information officer would be, and if this $1,000 is a good start. Sounds like she's got multiple roles too. I don't want to put too many roles on one individual person. Bless you.
God bless you.
But I agree that we need to move forward with having someone to represent the county and speaking on behalf of when things come up to have better accountability and better transparency to our citizens. So I'm for this.
And I would support that. There's so many things that are happening behind the scenes that we don't even get an agenda to talk about here, and very special things, and I think that an information officer would begin to facilitate that. I think this is a good seed money start, and I presume we have the money in the professional services bank account?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Is I'm hearing right or wrong, but they said 6 months? You said something about 6 months.
Oh, I was recommending we only do it for 6 months to see if the board likes it or not, the agreement with the county and Mrs. Clark. If you don't like it, then we don't renew. If you do, you extend it.
But if you're gonna do something, we'll be right back 6 months. Redoing it, it got to be done. I mean, it need to be done. I put it that way. We're not doing it now, but it need to be done. Why do it for 6 months?
That was my starting point, sir.
The year is 12 months.
It's board's option.
That's just my opinion. It's 4 more commissioners.
Well, I do believe we do need to have something like this. My only concern is if you hire an outside vendor to do it, they're still going to have to get the information from either you or Ms. Griffin.
Yes.
There's still going to be a review process where ultimately they're writing it up and you're just saying, yeah, that looks good.
That is true.
I'm still not completely in love with the current format, even though I know we need to move forward, if I'm honest. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, if it's somebody that doesn't work for the county, how much are they really going to know about the issues they're trying to write about? See what I'm saying? Because I can use my house as an example. I speak English. My wife is native Puerto Rican. She speaks Spanish. Some people say she speaks Mexican. That will warrant a bad thing from her, but nothing about Mexico, but it's Spanish. So there's language barriers. Well, even if we both spoke English, you can talk to somebody and still not understand what they're saying. So I'm still in the current thing with it being an outside vendor and it not being somebody from the county, I don't know how it's going to work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying, this is not about Ms. Clark, I'm not, you know, but at the end of the day, it's still gonna create more work for either you or Ms. Griffin or both. You know?
Somebody from the county has to dictate what's being said.
Yes.
Yes.
This is not a county employee you're talking about.
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess she does work for the board, but who's gonna give her the information to put out there? And what information is she putting out there?
Well,
and what's her priority on the information being put out there? I don't know. I'm like the chairman, I got reservations. I mean, if the board wants to move on, they got the votes to move on. But I just don't understand how it's gonna work. Basically, you take somebody off the street and say, you speak for the county. That to me, that don't work. Somebody has to tell them, all right, this is a priority. We want this put out there. We want this information. Somebody still got to do that. That is a county employee that does work for this board directly, not indirectly, but directly. So that you're putting out the proper information, the most accurate information on whatever subject line you're planning on putting information out. So I don't know how that
I mean,
works.
you are correct. It would still take direction from myself, Mrs. Griffin, to deal with that. A couple of things in my mind when we're doing this is that we just started a new budget. So I did not want to add a new employee to your budget after we just started a budget. So this was the next best thing as to going with a vendor that will take direction from us. Now, I will say initially, yes, I mean, she is speaking not so much in words of being on the camera, but yes, she will be releasing information now on behalf of this Board of County Commissioners as to what we did, what was done, for instance, what was done today, you know, and like the two topics that were here today, you know, the big topics, you know, one was the Bay, the other was the incorporation of St. George Island. So yes, there will be some information released on behalf of what we did today. That would be her job. You know, I will still defer that if there's anyone that wants to be interviewed based on something that's happening in your district specifically, I would prefer that district commissioner be the face that they see, you know, out there. And if it's a overall county thing, then we go to the chairman. That's how we do. But again, Commissioner, this was a starting point. Ms. Clark is familiar with the county. She's been here a long time. And so she knows some of the hot topics and how to deal with it. And it's not like she's not doing it. But yeah, this is just me giving you an option. If you guys like a different option, I will, based on your direction, I will go out there and work up something else, work up another option for you.
And we also discussed a review process, whereas nothing would actually be released without the blessings of county staff. So that's, you know, we're not going to have a rogue person.
Well, that's important to note. And I'm sorry, I'm just taking it at face value like I'm reading it.
Yes, exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I believe we need to do something with personal information. You know, information. If people want to know anything, they definitely want to be informed. Okay, I have no issue with that. I wasn't completely in love with what I was reading. I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to derail anybody, you know. But that was my only concern.
Yeah.
That was how it was going to come about. And you know, I know that I'm pretty sure the school and the sheriff's department, both of those that's their full-time job. That's what they do. Both of those people. So
yes, and you know, Mr. Chairman, I've always said to me, somebody needs to be telling our story. We shouldn't have somebody else telling, you know, basically our story. We need to control our story.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Would it be appropriate to require that Ms. Clark be at every county commission meeting so she hears it firsthand, here in person?
I think we have. I think if she's logged on to Zoom, sir, she just gets the same benefit as sitting in a room. Yes,
or
sir.
Zoom.
Yes, sir.
But she's present and accounted for during our meetings.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
I'm not trying to take nothing from Ms. Clark, nobody else, but you're gonna pay somebody. You gotta pay. Well, y'all, you saying the budget just started. I'm quite aware of that. But we still gonna have to pay Ms. Clark or somebody. But if you're gonna do something like this, the employee would be better because they can do that plus. Ms. Clark got other obligations. she got to do.
That's right.
But if we get an employee, when the time she not doing this, it's something she can be helping in our office too. I mean, you know,
Okay.
that's the way I see it. But like I said, I'm just one. It's just
So-
one man's opinion.
Let me ask another question. Would it be something that you want to just start to see if we even like having a person information officer? I guess, you know what I mean?
That's
Then it
kind
can
of,
always,
that's where my 6 months
Yeah.
was there, commissioners, is to see if you like this and you say, okay, Michael, we like it, but we want more. And then you guys say, okay, go out and start looking, compare some salaries, you know?
Okay.
Call Evergreen and see what they
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
you know, would be a fair salary to pay, and compare it with the school board and compare it with the sheriff's department. That Commissioner Lockley was the reason for my 6 months, kind of a, you know, a feel it out type time and see what you guys think.
Ain't no feeling. I mean, it's no feeling. People need to know.
Yeah, no, you're right.
The people need to be.
Here's
we
a
need
thought.
to let the people know what's going on. And we not letting them know we ain't putting nothing in, trying to hide nothing. Put it out there. Cause they gonna talk. We gonna get talk about it anyway. But
so is this something we want to think about and bring back at a later time? What does the board want to do today? Because that's all he asked for was discussion and direction from here.
Yes.
Another thought may be that part-time administrative person that you're thinking about here with Courtney's maternity leave coming up, can that potential person be combined into one position for doing two jobs administratively and public information? Would that be a model?
I mean, I think that's what Commissioner Lockley is saying, so
For
we
an
go out
employee?
we basically go out, again, get some job duties and description and see what we can do and what else they can do in the office, because, you know, Courtney will be back
Yeah.
full-time, so we would have to make some change. The part-time that we were looking for, that is strictly building department, that, yeah. Because the building department is now a fee-based situation, they can't do anything else. Well, they can, but we'll have
Yeah.
to set up a different pay structure, let's put it that way. I mean, it could be done, Commissioner, I don't want you to think it can't be done. But again, Aaron and I basically, we're looking for direction from the board as to how you want to proceed with this.
At a 6 months trial run, I mean, it would actually, you know, give the board a chance to actually see if they liked the services that were provided.
But if you want more information, I can go get more and bring it back at the next meeting and you compare, you know, a employee versus a vendor contract. Up to the board.
So it looks like it'll be something we'll be talking about in the upcoming meeting is what I'm seeing.
Okay. So I'll consider it tabled for now. So my direction is basically to do up a job description for employee, get a salary, and bring that back, and you'll compare the two at the next meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Job description. What are actually these people gonna be doing for $1,000 a month? I mean, I'm just saying, it don't matter who the name is or whatever.
Yeah.
They gonna put out stuff twice a month?
No, it'll be.
For our 2 meetings and that's it?
No, it'll be more than twice a month, Commissioner, because you'll have ongoing issues that spur from the meeting that will have follow-up information. So
Man, I don't know.
We can actually send you all her formal proposal.
Yes.
Maybe that would be
Yeah,
good.
that would be helpful.
I ain't seen nothing except
Yeah.
for what y'all saying, $1,000 a month. We meet twice a month. You give highlights of this meeting, highlights of that meeting, you're gonna pay them $250 a week to do 2 meetings a month? I mean, I don't know how all this works and what you're proposing.
Yeah.
Is this an everyday job? I mean.
To some degree it is, but I will get her proposal and send it to the board directly. I mean, I basically just try to summarize her proposal here in my narrative, you know, for you, because this is something the board had asked for.
Well, it's something we ain't never did before too, so.
Exactly.
$1,000 per month as well is gonna be vastly more affordable
And
than
that-
a full-time.
Oh, yeah.
This one.
And let me be clear, I'm saying 1,000 is actually up to 1,000. I should have stated that, not that it could be for less. I was just giving you a maximum, so I'm not saying that each month you're gonna pay for $1,000. It's basically, it'll be broken down to hourly type rate. What I didn't want to do is state that rate here publicly in case you decided to go out for some kind of RFP or something. That would have been unfair to Mrs. Clark too. So.
So maybe
But-
it'd just be better for us to look at the documentation you're talking about and we can discuss it at a future meeting.
So I'll send the documentation, and I will get some information as what we think an employee doing that, Commissioner Bolt, maybe 3/4 of the week, and then what else they can be doing, and bring that to you, and maybe we can get Mark and Evergreen to give us a suggestion, maybe. Okay?
Good.
Okay, so let's move on. So we're at item G, page 9. Commissioner Bolt has requested an additional code enforcement workshop for Alligator Point. When the board first approved the schedule, Commissioner Bolt agreed to the Lanark Village workshop as the only one in his district. Since then, Commissioner Bolt has decided that code enforcement issues for Lanark Village and Alligator Point differ. Therefore, separate workshops are needed. There'll be an additional $900 cost for the Apalachicola ARPC to coordinate and host this workshop, and this added workshop may cause a delay in the submission of the final report. Board action to approve an additional code enforcement workshop in Alligator Point at a cost of $900.
Michael, can I ask a question before we proceed?
Yes, sir.
Have you, in other words, you got a cost of $900, so I'm going to assume that you've spoken with ARPC staff about this issue?
That's correct.
Okay.
This $900 is based on an email from ARPC.
Okay,
Chris.
did they have any issues other than additional cost?
The cost and the deadline, like I said,
Right.
for submitting that final report to the board. They say it may or may not affect the original timeline.
Okay, well, it's kind of similar to the same issue above. It's something we need to look at for a long time, code enforcement. And so, if we're delayed at all, I don't think it's that big of a deal, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As long as the staff that's doing the work for ARPC, as long as it's not gonna mess with any of the other timelines, because they're doing quite a bit of work for us, and they do work in the whole region as well. That's the only reason I'm asking.
It's kind of expensive, eh?
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
Yes, it is.
What that meeting gonna be, 2 hours?
Well, it's the time, the travel, the research, and taking that information that they hear at the meetings and composing it into a report for you, so. But, yeah, I mean,
You pay for what you get,
yeah, pretty much.
So move.
but it's still high.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the addition of this workshop in Alligator Point by Commissioner Bolt,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Now, Commissioner Bolt, this will probably be added to the end of the schedule, because,
Yes, sir.
the other dates are set, and
It'll be
Chairman.
in December,
Yes, and Chairman, isn't the St. George Island
tomorrow night.
is tomorrow night at the fire station, correct?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the
Yep,
public
sure
is
is.
aware of that, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna start forms.
Sir,
We didn't vote.
did we vote on that? We did, didn't we?
We have 5-0.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. All right, go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'll start off in quotes on a request from Small County Coalition. As the board is aware, the Florida legislature passed legislation during the 2020 and 2021 legislative session aimed at establishing internet services in unserved and underserved areas and enhancing access where it is limited. The Small County Coalition has been working to call attention to this issue for years, and we feel that things are finally starting to move, end quote. With that said, Commissioners, the Small County Coalition officers are asking members for 2 things. First, designate a lead commission and lead staff person, which could be the chairman and the county coordinator. The second ask is the creation of a local technology planning team, which is an entity established pursuant to legislation. Members of the LTPT should include a cross-section of the community, such as representatives from public safety, your libraries, K-12 education, colleges and universities, local healthcare providers, private businesses, community organizations, economic development organizations, local governments, tourism, parks and recreation, and agriculture. Appointments will be decided by the board. I've attached the most recent draft of Bridging the Gap for your review and today's discussion. I'm not even looking for a motion today. I just want to basically tell you guys and the public what they're expecting, and I will put this back on my report so we can actually start the appointment of some people, or consider who we would appoint to this LTPT, and also appoint if it's the chairman and myself, or another commissioner and another staff member, which we don't have much of, to, for a small county coalition. All right, so not even sure you guys want to discuss it today, because you need some time to kind of read Bridging the Gap, and to maybe contact Chris at the Small County Coalition for more information. Okay? If we can move on, the East Point Christmas Parade Event Coordinator, Ms. Dottie Thurnberg, is requesting board approval for the 2021 East Point Christmas Parade and Celebration. This event is scheduled for Friday, December 10th at 4:30 p.m. with parade participants lining up at 4. Parade will start behind Webb Seafood at the corner of Power Drive and C.A. Gillespie Street, turning east onto Highway 98 and ending at Fisherman's Choice. Ms. Thurnberg will coordinate with the Sheriff Smith for traffic control. So I just need a board to approve the route.
So moved.
Okay. Motion to approve by Commissioner Ward.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bolt. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
J, to the very bottom of the page, the senior class is requesting the use of the courthouse and annex parking lot on Friday, that's this Friday, after 1 p.m. and all day Saturday for a fundraiser event. On these days during Seafood Festival, they will charge for the use of the parking spaces to raise money for the senior class. The board has approved this request in the past many times.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? I would only ask, as a parent of a senior at Franklin County High School, that everybody that's at this meeting or listening to this meeting live use this parking area for your trip to the Seafood Festival and support your senior class.
Okay.
There you go. So
That's my one comment, sorry.
Yep, there you go.
So park here and raise money for the seniors.
There
That's
you
what you're
go.
saying, sir.
That's right.
Donations are appreciated.
Okay. I missed that one. Okay.
There you go.
So
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay. So, Kay, staff has been unsuccessful with engaging a contractor to reinstall the wake zone signs that have been damaged over the last few years. Would the board recommend advertising for RFP for this service? We've tried. I mean, we've tried. Courtney and I have tried. Courtney has tried, to be very honest with you about this, and she's been unsuccessful.
Where are these located, Michael?
Oh, Ocalochnee, I know, right, Commissioner Bolt?
Yep, right.
2 Mile, Commissioner Parrish, Commissioner Lockley, remember we had that
There's supposed to be
discussion?
some in the East Point channel that aren't there either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the problem is this, getting the signs is not the problem. Getting somebody to install the signs.
I thought the issue was getting them to permit us putting the signs back since they weren't there anymore.
Well, we have some of the
Okay.
permits already in place, and they've
Okay.
already told us just put them back where it's designated to put them back. That's all.
Okay.
If we change them there, then we gotta go through the permitting process.
Okay.
Commissioners, I guess I'm at the end of the rope here, and this is the only other choice I see, unless you guys think of something better to
Well,
have them reinstalled.
It's a public safety issue. I think we ought to do our best to advertise.
What they got to put on some poles?
Yeah, you gotta put down the poles, and maybe they gotta make sure they put them exactly where they are, using the coordinates that we give them, based on where they were before.
Y'all tried all them people who did that?
Yeah, I have to ask Courtney if she talked to the doc people who she got. I mean, there are a few people that she reached out to in Panama that we got, actually FWC recommended some contractors. But they all looked at the job and said, I guess they have more work going on.
What are the?
I mean, they got some local people that build up. What, you have to have a special license for this?
Or just be able to, again, just put them where they are. I mean, I could reach out to local dock vendors. I didn't think about that, Commissioner. I'd see
That's
if
what I
she-
was thinking.
See if she had. She could have. I'm not saying she didn't, but, I'll double check.
I have.
Oh, that's Courtney, I'm sorry. So,
Okay.
so stay on the line, Courtney. So basically, you've reached out to some of the dock vendors also?
Correct. I pulled some of our dock vendors off that actually submit dock permits to us, and also ones that we have in our contractors list, and either they've returned back or they say, we'll look into it, and they really don't have the time to fit it in.
Mr. Chairman, what about our oyster men and women, or our fishermen or seafood workers? Is that I guess the requirement, they don't have to have any special licenses or anything of that nature, right?
Not that I know about, I'll defer to Courtney to double check with FWC, because we have to make sure, again, the only thing I'm worried about is making sure they put it exactly where the permit says it's supposed to go. That's what
And you
concerns
gotta
me.
install a pole that's gonna stay there.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
just stick it in the mud, it
Yeah.
falls over,
Yeah.
you ain't done nothing.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to drive the pole into the ground.
So someone with some experience is what we're looking at. Again, I can do our free, we'll advertise locally. I'll advertise in Tallahassee, Panama City, and see what we come up with. Yeah. If, if the board says yes, that's,
Well, they got a GPS with their coordinates on it.
Okay.
So you guys are good with the advertisement? That's
Yep.
basically
Yes.
what I'm asking.
Yep.
I guess I probably should ask for more than just direction. I probably ask for a motion for that, since I'm spending the county's money. So I'll need a motion allowing me to do advertising.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt,
Second.
second by Commissioner Lockley for the advertising. Try to have these no-wake signs reinstalled across the county. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
All right, I need to read a couple of informational items. I have Commissioners, Ms. Tracy Busby, a consultant, has submitted the 2 legislative appropriations requests to Senator Osley's office and Representative Scholl's staff yesterday. That was the deadline. The first is a $2.5 million for construction of your new EOC, and the second is a $7 million request for a new facility at Weems Hospital. I've sent you copies of those requests, and Mr. Busby is available if you have any additional questions. Another note, the legislative delegation meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, November 10th, right here in this room at 5 p.m. And I'll remind you guys the day before, okay? But right in here, and that helps the public also. And let's go, I did M already, let's go to N. And Mr. Chairman, I know you're kicking, just stop me when you do like Attorney Schuler, just cut me off when you want to jump in there,
Okay.
sir. So, on March 31st, the Port St. Joe Dialysis Clinic ran by DaVita closed, which created, again, I'm in quotes, a great vacuum of care and need for kidney care and dialysis care in Gulf and Franklin counties. Gulf County staff has been in discussion with,
Fresenius.
did I type that correct?
No, that's
Fresenius?
right, Fresenius.
I was looking at it because I was listening to, I saw the guy's face as I just looked at that. The largest provider of kidney service in the county, about reopening the Port St. Joe Clinic. The Gulf County Board of County Commissioners invited Franklin County officials to a workshop to meet the representatives and support the reopening of the clinic. Chairman Jones and Mr. David Walker, that's the Weems CEO, along with myself, attended the workshop, and Chairman Jones and David Walker discussed the importance of a clinic in Port St. Joe, which will reduce the travel times for Franklin County residents having to receive frequent dialysis services. Gulf County staff will continue to update us on the progress of these negotiations. Chairman Jones, like I said, may comment further on this meeting.
Well, I will say this, Commissioners, that probably of no shock to you, one of the questions asked was about our 1 cent healthcare tax that we have. And I told them that that was possible to have a discussion, but I think they need to understand, and I say they, I'm talking about Gulf County, and everyone else is talking about trying to make this work for the better of all of our citizens in both counties. You know, without Franklin County, Gulf County's numbers don't work either, stand alone by themselves. So, you know, it is a effort together. Look, if anything, if we can increase health care anywhere in our county, or the possibility of health care for any of the residents in this county, then I think we need to be doing that. That's why I think, you know, they've not done anything with it yet, but that's why we approved that medical building in East Point, the commercial site plan, several months ago. You know, it's not about getting less, it's about getting more. And healthcare is definitely needed, and dialysis care in particular. You know, it's one thing to, and I don't mean this the way it's going to sound, it's one thing to live in Gulf County and have to travel back and forth to Panama City. It's another thing to live in Franklin. It's a lot longer drive to do that 3 times a week to go get dialyzed or get kidney care. And we're halfway in between Tallahassee or Panama City. So if we can get something closer to us, I think that's a conversation we definitely need to be involved in.
Yeah, Fresenius was trying to feel us out, Commissioner, because they're trying to figure if they should open something, a clinic in Tallahassee
Yes.
also, because they basically want to capture everybody in this region is what
Yes,
they're
they
trying
do.
to do, commissioners. So it was kind of interesting who was actually feeling who out, you know, in that whole situation there.
So, Mr. Chairman, why did it close?
They said they couldn't afford to do it anymore. They weren't making money doing it, so they closed.
And DeVita?
So what are they actually wanting us to do?
I don't know what they're wanting us to do, but I didn't misrepresent the board. I was there to hear about how we could increase care. But there was a question posed to me in particular as the chairman of the board about our 1-cent healthcare tax.
So if we gave them some of that, our citizens would be afforded free dialysis?
I don't know that. I didn't entertain opening that box, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
I'm just
I
trying
did
to
not.
figure it all out.
No, I let them know that I was there representing the board, but I'm not the board.
So
We speak in unison, so.
The company before DeVita, they lost their Blue Cross Blue Shield contract.
Yes.
And they were saying basically that what Gulf County officials are telling me, that basically without that contract, the numbers are so small of patients, they couldn't survive without that, so they left. And they.
So how do they lose the Blue Cross Blue Shield contract? How do you lose that?
That far, I didn't go that far.
Or was the reimbursement not enough?
Don't know.
Or did they actually lose the contract? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody was there representing the company that pulled out, so I mean, all that was being
So
said
it's
is what
not
they
a
wanted to
question
say.
we don't
There
have
are.
to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I'll leave it alone.
What I learned too, commissioners, was very interesting is that that medical building right next to Sacred Heart is not owned by Sacred Heart. There's another there's owners for that building, so there's a separate negotiation that has to go on for the rental and the use of the space that was there, because they're not sure if they want as much space as DeVita had or less, or so there's a lot of negotiations going on, is the point I'm trying to get across with it. And I'll just get information and pass it on to the board until you guys are ready.
So they were talking about going to Tallahassee because Gulf County, Franklin County, Wakulla County, all these different counties, ain't enough volume.
So they want to open one in Tallahassee and the one in St. Joe. That's what they were talking about, because they basically want to catch all of Franklin County, maybe some Liberty County, and then going that way, and then, anything on this Apalachicola to St. Joe going that way, to go to St. Joe.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Let's think about our own Weems Memorial Hospital as a host site potentially for this dialysis. There is a lot of very good space available in that hospital. There's that term called swing bed that has an option there for Medicare. It's an opportunity for our county to get involved in another service. And we have a management company that could look into this and give that thought to the hospital. So I would entertain seeing if we could be the host for this dialysis center right here in Franklin County and go that direction.
I would, if Mr. Chairman?
Yep, right.
I would say that since Mr. David Walker was there, he is talking to Alliant about this overall project to see what their opinion is about it. I will mention to David what you suggested, sir, and I'll have him call you to discuss it more.
Please, thank you, appreciate it.
And geographic location with Capital Health Plan, their network
Yes.
not extending to Gulf County, that, that's mentioned by attorney.
That's right, we're Capital Health Plan.
That would actually be a good selling point for Franklin County.
Yes.
148 members.
And I didn't bring up the whole Capital Health Plan deal, because we were there to listen on how they're, what kind of care they want to provide. That's what I was there trying to ascertain.
Well, ain't that paid on the state and government level?
Don't know.
Mostly?
Don't know. I have no idea.
You mean, I'm sorry, the company for seniors, or?
I meant the treatment.
We're a critical access hospital, which shows favor from Medicare.
Yeah, for us it would be, not for, not in Gulf County, it wouldn't be. If that's what both of you guys are talking. So what you're asking is the critical access would extend to that if we do that here.
I think it adds another credential for hosting dialysis here.
It could, but I think that's something that Mr. Walker and
I do too.
management company could better
I mean,
grasp.
by us being critical, if they do it, we'll get more return. But since they already set up, I don't.
Yeah, that's a question I couldn't answer for you today,
Maybe
sir.
you the medical field.
Well,
I don't know if she knows billing
I've
though,
been
but.
taking it all in and listening, but yes, Mr. Chairman, I have seen the need for dialysis. We have a lot of people in Franklin County that use dialysis that are having to travel to Tallahassee and Panama City, and there are times they have transportation is an issue for them, and they will miss their dialysis treatment for a day or 2 days. A lot of these people, as you said, have to get it 3 days a week, and so they'll go 2 of the days without treatment, and then they come in an emergent situation to Weems or to Sacred Heart, and they're in an emergent need to get it. And so there is a need, whether it's here in Franklin County or in Gulf County, there is a big need. But keep in mind too that with this, but this is way more to go into this than this board today, but there has to be specialty nurses that can do dialysis.
Yes.
They have to have special credentials. The lab itself, the dialysis center itself, has to have all these special credentials that go along with being able to administer dialysis. But I agree. I mean, I think anything we could get here in our county or as close as we can to help facilitate dialysis to our citizens is a great idea, and I'm all for it.
Okay.
But if there's not enough volume in Gulf County between Franklin and Gulf, then there ain't gonna be enough in Franklin County between Gulf and Franklin to do it here. It's all about the volume is what I'm understanding.
Yes, sir, but the advantage is basically what I think Commissioner Locke and Commissioner Bolt is bringing up. If it's here and in some way our critical access designation helps with getting, 101, 102% back, then volume, that might make up for the volume. And Commissioner, I'm just speaking to you what I'm thinking. I don't know this to be a fact.
And Mr. Chairman, think about our per capita, how many people we have in our county and what insurance provider they have. Blue Cross Blue Shield's huge. If they lost their contract, well, then that's going to eliminate the amount of people that they can get volume-wise to accommodate them getting reimbursed. CHP's a big, I know with our county, that's our county insurance.
You bet.
That's a big driving force with
very much.
volume.
Yep.
So you got to look at your insurance data, who has what insurance and what carriers are and what the reimbursement rate would be and how the volume would be.
Yeah, well, now, the new company there, Fresenius, they weren't expressing any kind of problem with healthcare providers. That's the one that closed. We're having a problem with Blue Cross.
DaVita's who lost the contract, not Fresenius.
Not this new one. They're actually the largest provider in the country.
Yeah.
They have more dialysis labs than anybody else does.
They may have traveling specialty nurses as well.
Probably so, yes.
Well, we also need to be looking at, what she said was transportation for these people. They need that transportation. Gulf got it.
Yep.
We might need to.
We have transportation disadvantage, Commissioner
Yeah, we do.
Lockwood, but for one reason or another, if they either don't schedule the appointment or wind up having to miss for some other reason, that's what's causing it actually sets them back in their care schedule. You know what I mean? It really does.
But that long drive is the Commissioner Ward is saying that long drive, commissioners, is what sometimes why they miss. They can't go today, tomorrow, and the next day because it wears them out. So the shorter the distance of the drive, the better it is for the patient.
Well,
I got one of my neighbors. He on it, and like he go to Panama. Well, he on that. He go like early. He old time, he goes early. But he leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa.
And get back about 1 or 2 o'clock.
It's a long day. And
Yeah.
then,
It is.
as Mr. Malone said, a lot of them don't really feel like going in the first place. So it's better for them to go, obviously, shorter distance and longer distance. I think somewhere is better than locally, as local as possible.
Mr. Morone, maybe one other thing we could look at that's actually under our purview. So we have the Transportation Disadvantage Program. Is it possible to engage ARPC staff and see if it's able? Can we start trying to designate trips for people that are receiving dialysis care as opposed to any other trip? Because here's the issue they run into. Some of them that use that program, which is a very good program, often at low or no cost to them. But I would think if I was having to have dialysis 3 times a week, I wouldn't want to be on the bus at 7 in the morning or riding with everyone else, doing my dialysis for hours, and then waiting more hours to get my ride back because other people are finishing their appointments.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's possible,
That's how
but can we at least ask?
It works, because we have an agreement with Gulf County Transportation, and that's what they do. So they basically pick everybody up,
Right.
and have all the doctor's appointments.
Yeah, they got more than one, though, is what I'm saying.
They got 2.
Can we ask if between the two, in the meantime, all this is being, none of this is being done yet, it's just being talked about. In the meantime, can we somehow segment people that are needing to have dialysis versus other trips?
So you want a specific?
So either, if there's 4 or 5 that are possibly going on transportation disadvantage, they're all going at 7 in the morning, they're all coming back at 2 in the afternoon.
Okay.
They're not having to wait on other people's appointments, or, I'm sure they want to go through all that after they do. You know what I mean?
One van for
Yes.
dialysis patients.
That's what I'm
basically.
saying.
Okay.
See if it's even a possibility. They might say no. I don't know.
How long does it actually take to go through the process?
Some people it's 2 or 3 hours, some it's 4 or 5. It depends on the level of care they're
So
in.
if you had 5 people in the bus, they might not even be able to do it all that day.
They might not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
a question.
and for
they got 2 shifts. One leave, half of them leave 5 o'clock in the morning. And then they got another bus come pick some people up late on that day. So my sister-in-law, her bus, it'd be in the daylight, 9, 10 o'clock. The other one, it'd be like, 5 o'clock in the morning.
And Fresenius.
Him and Wayne,
Lil Wayne. Fresenius did say too that they are also looking at a new procedure that will cut down the time, Mr. Chairman, help me. So sometimes like an hour or 2 that they're looking at also. Because they're not talking just for dialysis, they're talking total kidney care is what they want to do in Gulf County. That's what they're looking at. So I a lot was said, but there was a lot of feeling out, so, but I'll keep the board informed, and I will check into this with our ARPC, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, they also talked about the possibility of people that their need was not as great. They are working through a permitting procedure that would basically allow them to do telemedicine for people that are
At
just,
home. They sure did
that
talk
are
about
still
that,
staying
too.
at home
They did.
and able to help those residents out that maybe are not as severe as some others.
So, but okay, that's my report, Commissioners.
Was that already wrapped it up, right? Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Attorney Schuler, you're next, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Real quick, I've got one thing for you it may require a motion, so I don't want to proceed any further. Speed limit change, I know, and I just got an update on Ryan Drive in Carabello. This is from Roberts and Roberts. They are anticipating delivery of the structures, which is the head walls, tomorrow, which will be today, because I got this email yesterday. They got to do a locate for the lines and such, no dig. Hopefully they'll be in the field next week and start the project sometime next week. And I know they're going to be probably taking up signs. This is something we probably need to look at for when they maybe get done. But I talked to the mayor of Carabello yesterday about this, about changing the speed limit on Ryan Drive from 35 to 25. So I'll make a motion to look into that. I don't know, I think it has to come to the board for a vote to change speed limits.
Is Ryan Drive a county road or a city of Carabello
Well,
road?
you know, that's
I mean, I legitimately want to know. I'm not.
That question was going to come up, and I spoke with the mayor, and you know, there's always an argument about which is city, which is county. I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want, you know, speed limit change because there's pedestrians, there's people walking their dogs, there's bicycle traffic. City, county, we can hash that out later. I just want to make sure that when Ryan Drive gets repaired, that the speed limit changes from 35 to 25 if that's possible.
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe a way of responding to that for the city of Carabello to say the county has no objection to the city of Carabello changing the speed limit if they want to. That way we're not viewed as the obstacle. But if we start exercising control over a road, then we are effectively planting our flag in that space.
Well, then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a motion to determine what's city and what's county, because this is kind of aggravating for me to have to, when I get approached with things, is it city, is it county? I just want stuff done. I don't know what to do to get it done, but it's kind of getting tiring for me as a commissioner for that district to deal with that. So do what we have to do. I spoke with the mayor. I don't know if maybe we can sit down and have a talk with her, or if we can go to the courthouse and get plats of what's owned by the city and what's owned by the county. I'm just asking for stuff to get done, and I'm tired of the back and forth. Is it city, is it county? And nothing against county staff, but I'm just wanting stuff done, and I just need to know how to get it done. We can all work together. We're all adults. Let's figure it out.
I will second that.
How about we get Attorney Schuler to reach out to the City of Carabello County Attorney, let them meet and talk and come back and say, okay, this is what, they both talk and they come back and say, this is what we think should be done. Is that okay?
That'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I do think there needs to be a final termination.
Yes.
My question was not an attempt to derail a speed limit sign. Please
Well,
don't
I knew it
take
was going to come up eventually, and I knew the question was going to come
Yeah.
up, and I was trying to figure out how to do it in a way that I don't sound abrasive or aggressive, but I'm trying to get stuff done for my district. My district does fall within the city limits, as does Commissioner Bolt, so we share it. And I just think it needs to be addressed, and we need to figure it out one way or another.
Well, just for some historical data, the county and the city have had this conversation a number of times, and it's never come to resolution. The city's position has always been it's a county road, and when I ask why, basically the response in sum is because we say so. I haven't been able to receive any data that says the county has accepted this road, that the county built and constructed and maintained the road. It's just always been a sore spot, for lack of a better description right now, between the city and the county. I mean, the road is entirely within the city limits of the city of Carabello. It's just like 12th Street in Apalachicola, and entirely within the city limits of the city of Apalachicola. The city has always said, well, that's a county road. And essentially we get the same response. Well, why is it a county road? It's inside your city limits. Just because we pave and improve your roads doesn't mean they're our roads. Because that was one of the things that was cited to me is, well, y'all paved the roads. Well, we paved all the roads, and I don't think the city of Apalachicola has ever paved 5 feet in the last 20 years in the city of Appalachia. That doesn't mean they're our roads. We're just providing a service to the constituents that are within the city of Appalachia, but they are also within the districts of county commissioners. So
Well,
I'll be glad to have the conversation. The board tells me to, I will, but I mean, I've never received any hard data, hard facts, a county resolution, something that I can come back to the board and go, they're right. I mean, and if I get that information, I'm not wedded to a particular position, but just don't tell me that's the way it is because you say so. Give me the data, give me the facts, give me the law. And if the county's right, we're right, and if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Well, I know with the Ryan Drive, we did do the share cost thing, and in the agreement state that no one's taking or ownership of the road or saying that somebody owns the road over the other. But again, like I said, it's issue, and I would appreciate if you could reach out to them, because I'm getting told by county staff, and I'm getting told by city staff, it's county, no, it's city, and here I am at an impasse, and I just need to know what to do to proceed when I have somebody ask me a question and a constituent say, can we do this? And I'm told, well, is it city, is it county? I really just want something done. I mean, we could work together and get it done. And I understand the county's position if it's city and they're responsible for certain things. That's why we have municipalities. That's why they get tax money. That's why all that happens. But again, it's just something that we're going to have to figure out to proceed with accomplishing goals that we have.
Well, and Commissioner, the repair to Ryan Drive is something this board supported you in.
Yes.
Even though it is, even though this still hasn't been settled, you know what I mean? So, again, my question wasn't to try to derail a speed limit sign, but,
And I appreciate that, and that's just it. We're gonna have to work together for the future betterment of our county with any municipality that we deal with. And I just, proceeding forward, that's my only request, is that we can do it in a way It's fair for everybody, but we can still get stuff accomplished and not delay certain things and certain actions from happening.
Can you use it as a evacuation route?
Yeah, yes, sir. I don't think it's considered a evacuation route, but people do use it and can use it. I know a lot of people use that route to go back and forth to work at the prison.
Yep.
Instead of going all the way up 67, they'll cut through Ryan Drive. And that's another reason why I was going to get the speed limit changed, because I've gotten a lot of complaints about people on their bicycles or walking their dogs, and at shift change, I know not to go at that time because people are going down that road at a relatively high rate of speed, trying to get back and forth to work. I know that's not a board thing, it's a law enforcement issue thing, but still, to get the speed limit changed, and I know speed limits, people are still gonna go above the speed limit that's posted, but at least you've got something that you can enforce it with a speed limit post.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
When it comes to money and grant funding, I'm finding more and more the modern thinking is it's not them or us, it's we together as entities, county and city, working together to garner up monies and grants in other areas, and I think that cooperation is a real new and modern way to go. So anything we can do to work with the county, with the county working with the city, I think is very, very admirable.
Okay, so procedurally, sir, don't we have a motion and a second on the floor?
We do. I would request that they be withdrawn.
I will rescind my motion and instead direct you, Attorney Schuler, to speak with Mr. Hartman, the city attorney, to discuss how to proceed when I get a call about something, how to proceed with that, whether it's a city or a county thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have to go through the same thing with Appalachia.
Really? Do you? Really?
What was that?
He said, basically, the whole
Yes,
12th
good.
Street thing in Appalachia is what he was saying.
Yeah.
He has to deal with too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Attorney Schuler, up to you, sir.
All right, so the only action item I have is board consideration of an engagement letter for the firm of Baker Donaldson. I had brought to the board's attention at the last meeting on October the 19th an issue with a proposed FEMA flood map amendment, which I am concerned is going to affect the existence, the continued existence and improvements and maintenance and repairs of the Apalachicola Airport. Essentially, the current flood map says that the runways and most of the airport are outside of a flood zone. This proposed FEMA flood panel map is going to show essentially all of the airport in an unrated A zone. When I reported that to the board at the last meeting and requested authorization to find a firm to recommend to you, that was approved. I had spoken with a couple of other county attorneys that referred me to this firm of Baker and Donaldson. I had sent to you the proposed engagement letter that I received Friday afternoon. I sent that to you yesterday. And has the board had an opportunity to review and consider that engagement letter so I don't have to go through the meat and potatoes of it? I mean, I'll proceed as the board wants, but essentially the engagement letter would, in summary, retain this firm for the purposes of reviewing the proposed FEMA flood map, provide options to the board to consider for potentially challenging that proposed FEMA flood map. It would review the data and analysis that FEMA has relied on to propose this new flood map. It has a rate schedule of the attorney's fees and staff, which ranges anywhere from a low of $170 an hour to a high of $605 an hour. I agree that this is, sort of out of our norm in terms of the firms we retain and the expenses that we're looking at. But given the fact that this potentially affects the continued existence of our county airport, I am recommending this to you. And then the other item within this engagement letter is, frankly, I think they spent way too much time talking about it, so obviously it's something that's important in their industry. This is a big firm, it represents a lot of people, and essentially they say that just because we're representing you and we're representing other people and your interests may not necessarily align, but you'll waive that conflict of interest provided that we're not doing anything that's adverse particular to Franklin County. So they spent basically an entire page talking about the waiver of a potential conflict of interest. With that explanation, does the board have any further questions for me about this engagement letter? If not, I'm recommending that the board enter into this engagement letter with this law firm, at least for the purposes of doing our due diligence to examine, am I right or wrong on how bad this potential flood map could be, what your options are in considering a challenge to this FEMA flood map. Once that is done, then a report will come back to this board for you to make a decision how you want to proceed with the options presented by the law firm. We only have 90 days to make a decision whether or not to file a challenge to the FEMA flood map. That 90-day clock started ticking officially on October the 15th. So I'm recommending that the board move forward, approve the engagement letter as I've described to you here this morning.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley, second by Commissioner Parrish. Any discussion?
There was presented to me last week a schedule of monies that could be spent to mitigate this flood zone issue relative to Dewberry.
I'm bringing that up next.
That's the second
That's
issue,
the next
sir.
point. That's not, that doesn't link to this one then.
No.
I'm not going, if the board approves this engagement letter, I'm going to ask the board to designate a fund for the payment of these expenses. Yes, sir.
All right, any more discussion on the motions on the table? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
And then the
Proceed,
second
please.
component to this, Commissioners, is you essentially have two funds of money that you can consider to designate for the payment of these services. One would be your professional services fund. The second is your airport fund. My recommendation to you, since this is only an airport-related challenge and doesn't affect non-airport property of the county, and bearing in mind that the lease with Gengoli just went into effect at paying $15,000 a month rent, I am recommending that the board designate the airport fund as the payment for the services of Baker and Donaldson that are described in the engagement letter. And if we have to go forward with the actual filing the appeal and going through that administrative process, that same fund be used for that purpose as well.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Anything
All
else,
right,
sir?
very good. That's all for me.
All right, anyone have any questions for Attorney Schuler? Or,
Still don't understand that. It wasn't in no flood zone when the government had it. It was a,
sir, it wasn't flooded during Hurricane Michael either.
no, but I'm talking about the.
I mean, there wasn't no water
wasn't
there.
Wasn't that part of Will Road too?
Yes, it was.
There wasn't no flood zone when all them, when the army was out there.
We didn't need a fire sprinkler in the armory over here either when the National Guard was there, but since we got it, we gotta have a fire sprinkler.
Welcome to our
scenario.
present reality.
Same
So now we move on to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners have any comments today? I have one. I'd like to remind everybody in the other half of my district, 2 weeks ago, we had the first public workshop on code enforcement and what we're looking for in code enforcement in the different areas of the county. This is the time for it to not be what we five are saying to each other, but what the residents themselves are looking for. So it's going to be on St. George Island. I want to make sure and remind everybody about that meeting. I think it's very important. It's tomorrow. And the meeting is from 5 to 7 at the firehouse. Any other commissioners' comments?
What about the Seafood Festival and the parade on Saturday? Is there any representation of the county commission relative to that, or how we think about that?
Yeah, not usually. They keep it more seafood related and more, you know what I mean? Stuff to do with the high school and the homecoming court and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
No, we just have to sign up for it.
We just volunteer at senior booths and other stuff.
Okay.
You have to
So,
do the same thing. You can
don't
sign
forget
up.
that too. You can park in the lot and come see the senior booth. We'll sell you some low country boy.
volunteered a lot of them.
Yes, sir.
Something deep.
All right. Seeing no other commissioner comments, we will adjourn.